Okay, we are live. Welcome to the live stream for what is today? Oh, I left my phone downstairs. Oh no, I knew I was forgetting something. I don't know what today is. Today is a Wednesday. That's all I know. Welcome to the live stream. My name is Dana Morningstar. This is something that I do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It runs for about 3 hours. So welcome. And before I get going, before I forget, we have book club tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the book that we're going to be I am so unprepared tonight. It's ridiculous. The book that we're going to be discussing is Who is Pulling Your Strings? Was the last book club book that we read. So it was a great book. My notes are live on my website. If you want to go check those out under thriveafterabuse.com, go to book club and you will see my notes from that book and from all the other books we've discussed. And there's been quite a few. So welcome. Hey, Shara, Lauren, Mermel, Robbie, Michael, Karen, James, Tanitria, Leslie, Kitty, lots of people on tonight. Sassy little Frassy, whose name always makes me smile every time I read it. And let's see, what else do I have to share with you guys? Oh, so two other things that were pretty cool. I got my journal. I've been working on this 5-year journal book. I got that back from the formatter this morning. So that's super exciting. There's like a whole page of corrections that we need to make to it, but it's getting there. And then the next step is going to be to figure out how to go about getting it printed. That's going to be the next challenge. But I keep overwhelming myself, like thinking too far out. So next step is just to get it actually 100% done and formatted the way that I like, and then we'll go from there. So that's a huge thing. And then the second big cool thing is that I went to a thing called CraftCon. It's actually called the Midwest Craft Conference or Craft Convention over this past weekend in Ohio. And that was super cool. Met a lot of really amazing, talented people who are really making a difference in the world through craft. So, one of the gals that I met there, her name is Betsy Greer. I believe she's the gal that started the hashtag craftivism. And it's basically like literally changing the world through craft, like combining crafts and activism. And her presentation was incredibly powerful, really talking about how art has such a visual impact on people, and it just captures the emotion so appropriately and so poignantly and so beautifully, especially with topics that can be just so incredibly emotionally overwhelming. And so I don't know, that's kind of got my head, my little hamster on the wheel is going, because there's a lot that I think we could do there as a community. And let's see. What else? What has been going on with you guys? I know, right? Karen says, how can it be that tomorrow is already the last Thursday of the month? I know. So that is so crazy. It's amazing that this year is already flying by. I had on my list of things to do this month, that I also wanted to get both of my books recorded on as audiobooks, and that has not happened. That has really proven to be a much more massive undertaking than I would have ever imagined. So I'm trying to record them myself, and ACX, which is the Audible, I guess is really what it is. They're the sound check company. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly. They're the company that you submit an audiobook to, and then they make sure that your sound kind of meets all their criteria and all that. And it is like just been ridiculous. So I've gotten all these plugins for ACX, and I'm working on it. I'm still having trouble with getting the volume and range, and I don't know what that's about. So there's a local guy here that I'm thinking I might see if I can reach out to him, and if he can come over for like an hour, if I can just pay him to come over for an hour and just show me what I'm doing wrong and help me to do it right. James says, oh my God, Dana, I would 100% buy an audiobook if you were the narrator. ASMR, yo. That's cool. Well, thanks. I think it'll be fun. It'll be fun to read it. And yeah. So let's see. Amanda asks, hey, what is the Facebook group that is for people that have been out of the hell for a while? Okay, so that group that I started, it's called 365 I Thrive. So 365 I Thrive. It's on Facebook and it's a closed group, just like the other group. If you're in my other group, which is Thrive After Abuse, you will be automatically like just ushered in to the second group since we've already kind of vetted you for the first group. So I haven't done a whole lot. I posted a bunch of information in that second group, but I haven't done a whole lot to really kind of get that group going. I just have, I haven't been in town and I've just been really busy with stuff, but I plan on it. And it's still a great group. There's still a lot of people that are participating and stuff. So it's still, worth joining. What? Really? Shannon says, hey, Dana, I have one of your books on Kindle and it has an automated voice, I think, that switches back and forth from visual to audio automated voice. That is really weird. Unless Amazon is doing something, like they're trying out a new program. I don't know, but that is not me. And that's really kind of creepy. So I don't know what to say about that. I'll have to track that out. I'll have to ask my author group. They would know. That's the first I've heard of this. See, Kimberly asks, I'm flying back for mediation in Oakland for my divorce tomorrow. I'm so afraid he's going to fool the judge and the mediator. I'm not sure whether to underplay or totally get detailed about the abuse. Any advice? If you have any documentation, I would go with that and try to just stick to what you can prove. And I would avoid using terms like narcissist or sociopath or personality disorder, because that tends to just confuse people, I think, more than it does help. And they tend to look at that as, oh, it's just kind of an angry, bitter ex. So I would stick to behavior and not labels. So I would say, you know what, here are text messages that show like that he just, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. This is, not healthy for me or for my child. And, here's the evidence that I have to back it up. I think that's going to be your best way of going about that. Really? Shannon says, Dana, there are tons of books that have that with the switching back and forth, but I did not know that with that audio voice. How did I not know that? I'm gonna do some digging. I guess I did not know that was a thing. She says, so don't be freaked out. It's amazing, the stuff that that's out there technology wise. Oh my gosh. Lexi asks, do you struggle with other people who don't understand what you've gone through? I discovered that I get looked at like I'm a rebel. I think most of us struggle with other people not understanding at all. I wouldn't say that they look at me like I'm a rebel. I think they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, oh, you're exaggerating, or I think that one tends to be the biggest one, is because and I get it, right? Like if I hadn't lived it, I'd be like, yeah, this seems like a Lifetime TV movie. Like, how can this actually happen? This doesn't happen to people, right? It just happens to other people. It happens to people on the news or far away places, and I think that's just society's own level of denial. I think most people tend to think that we would all be able to spot a problematic person, and especially if they know the abusive person, in their mind, they're like, no, so-and-so is not abusive. That was just a bad relationship. Because in their mind, they're like, no, I really like John or Jane, and they don't see that side of them, or if they do see it, they justify it. Oh, well, they really had a bad childhood, or they were under a lot of stress, or they had a new baby, or you know just or they listen to whatever John or Jane has to say, which is usually blaming the target. And you know not only blaming the target, but a lot of times just flat out lies. So because abusive people very commonly make themselves the victim of the situation. So, you know, to outside people who've never gone through something like this, they cannot even begin to understand what it's like. I don't know. I have gotten to the point I don't talk to other people that don't get this. And I've quit trying to explain it and defend myself. And I kind of stick to my tribe. Like, you guys get this stuff. My support group gets it. There's lots of support groups out there that get this. So I talk to people that I know get it, because talking to a person who hasn't gone through it still, and it's been, years since I went through this, it still brings out rage in me. And I had mentioned that before in a live stream not too long ago. I went out to lunch with a friend, and we got to talking about what happened to me. And I embarrassed myself. I was so triggered, and I got so upset. And we were in the middle of a restaurant, and I was to the point where I just wanted to begin crying. I was so angry. And so it reinforced in me, like, people just really don't get it. My friend had good intentions. She was asking questions, but she was coming at it from a person who's never lived or obviously known anybody that's gone through something like this. And so I just realized then, like, it's still a huge trigger for me, and I need to not have conversations about it unless I am 100% like emotionally prepared to. And even then I need to realize, like, it's still a big trigger for me, and I need to know when to kind of like back up, because I don't want something like that to happen again. So, okay, let me scroll down here. Tanitria says, yeah, my ex-best friend would say so many things that are untrue to me about me, made me know she was very unsupportive. I agree. They say the most insensitive things. Yeah. And it's just ignorance. I mean, they just haven't lived it, it. And Bonnie says, I have pretty much given up trying to tell others about it too. It's sad because you really need support when going through this horror. I agree. What's frustrating too, that really chaps me, is, people go on marches. Like, when I used to work at the domestic violence shelter, there was a parade that we held every year in October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And everybody in the town came to it, and they supported it, and they had the t-shirt, and, and there was a whole thing where they even had a thing for men where it was just it was to bring attention to it. So they would wear like high heels and be in the march. And it was just all about kind of raising awareness and bringing attention to it. And I just, now knowing what I know now, I'm like, man, the level of hypocrisy and all that, because people say that they stand behind victims of domestic violence, and that they understand it, and blah, blah, and that they should leave. And, but it's like, they don't even know, like, it's just frustrating. It's like, you guys don't even understand what you're saying, because after the parade ends and you've got a family member that's talking about, their really manipulative, cruel, or abusive spouse, then those people are oftentimes the ones that are like, oh, well, it takes two to be in a relationship. It takes two people to make things work. Commitments forever, families forever, like all kinds of garbage, when, 30 minutes earlier, they were marching against abuse. So there's definitely this kind of huge disconnection out there between what people think abuse is and what abuse actually is. And I think even for people that are in the mental health field, so back to like the whole domestic violence parade and awareness and all that, we had posters that we would put up, but they were very stereotypical. Like it was, what you would think of when you would think of a really abusive looking guy, and what you would think of when you would think of a battered woman. There was like a woman, it's like a black and white photo of like a woman huddled in the corner with a black eye, and she's scared. And, the guy's in the doorway and he's big and buff, and there's just kind of this silhouette, and he looks mean. And I get why places use imagery like that, because it's powerful, but at the same time, the unintended consequence of that is that it perpetuates this stereotype of what an abusive relationship is like. And that's something that I try really hard on this channel to make sure that people understand. Like, abusive people can be any age, any gender, it can be any dynamic, any sexual orientation, any religion, any nationality, a friendship, a relationship, a work dynamic, like you name it. And so it's really important that we focus on the behavior, and because that behavior could come across in all of these different ways. But if our radar is only set to scan for, scary looking dudes, then we're missing, like, 90% of what else is going on out there. And it's so important to see the full picture. Kara was talking about the word narcissist and says, yeah, I agree. I never use the word narcissist anymore. I use manipulative or controlling. Yeah. And Sable says, I bored my sister today. I'm sure she is a narcissist though too, telling her how much I've learned through this online counseling. She immediately changed the subject. She hated me talking about my abuse, sort of. And that's very common. Like, people, I think, for a couple of things. So, like, after a person gets out of a situation like this, it's really common when a person's been manipulated, the human brain needs to make sense of what happened, because it's designed to keep us safe. And so it needs to make sense of what happened so it can work towards keeping us safe in the future. And so that's why oftentimes people go through this period where they're rehashing everything that happened, because they've been caught up in a web of lies. And they thought that their relationship was a certain way, and then they find out, oh my God, no, it's not. Like, I don't even know who I've been sleeping next to all these years. And that's a terrifying realization to come to. So, and then of course, like with every new piece of information that comes forward, then that person has to kind of go back to square one again. And even if they don't want to, like, then your brain is being like, okay, I've got another piece to this puzzle. How does this fit in? What does this mean? How can I keep myself safe in the future? And so this rehashing, this gathering of data, this putting together the pieces, all of this it takes a lot of time. And, when people tell us like, oh, you need to move on, or, you can't let this define you, or, whatever, it's like, if I could, like, if I could just move on, I would. Because nobody wants to live in this hell. Nobody wants to live where they're continually having to rehash what happened to them. And again, that's just something that, unless you've gone through it, it's difficult to explain to another person as to what's going on. I still get that. I was thinking today about how I think about this kind of often, how there's this perception of, I think, YouTubers, especially YouTubers that talk about this topic, versus our reality. And, my reality is that I have very few people that truly I feel support what I'm doing. I've been doing this, it'll be 3 years in April. I've had my YouTube channel, and I quit telling people that I had it, because I would just get weird looks. And I'm sure part of it was like, lady, you're not a kid. What are you doing having a YouTube channel? I'm 40, but at the time I was in my late 30s. They're like, you're in your late 30s. You have a YouTube channel. Isn't that for kids? That's weird. Oh, you talk about abuse in your own life. Like, who are you to be talking about that? And just got a lot of crap from a lot of people. And I really felt like, even at work, when I was a psychiatric nurse and people were finding out that I had this, I still felt very much like there was this attitude of, well, who are you to be talking about this? And I don't know. It was a terrible feeling. And so I And I didn't realize, I really thought that I could keep my like online life separate from my everyday life, and that wasn't the case. And so then I was horrified and deeply embarrassed that people were reading my blog. I just didn't think that anybody would come across my stuff, and I was horrified when they were. And it's caused a lot of problems in my life, with family, with friends, with, you know, it's so, yeah, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment about this kind of stuff. And it's just been recently that I've kind of come to peace, I guess, with the fact of this is what I want to do with my life. And I'm tired. I'm tired of trying to hide it. I'm tired of being embarrassed about it. People are going to think what they're going to think. I have to remind myself of this all the time. Like, people are going to think whatever they're going to think. And there's always going to be 10% that are going to hate whatever it is that I do. And then there's going to be 10% that are probably going to love whatever I do. And then 80% are going to fall in the middle. So like, I was struggling this with my journal. So I got my journal back from the formatter today, and I was going through it. And so, so in the book, I originally was going to put a bunch of quotes in from other people, from the Dalai Lama and from Buddha, and quotes from the Bible, and Maya Angelou, and just like all kinds of people that I thought were very powerful quotes. Spent tons of time finding quotes. And then my author group was like, you might have some issues with people that are either still living or have recently died. They might have, a trust that you have to just. So I was like, you know what, this is more of a legal hassle than I want to deal with. So I'll just put in my own quotes. But then I felt incredibly narcissistic, like quoting myself. And so then I really struggled with how to do that in a way that didn't seem like really conceited, because really, right? Like, you've got a book and you're quoting yourself. I don't know. It just still kind of feels ridiculous. It still feels ridiculous. Not kind of feels ridiculous. It still feels ridiculous. And so I'm going through it today, and I was like, you know what? I think these quotes are good. Like, I'm not going to get into legal trouble. I think they'll be helpful. 10% of people out there are going to think they're fine. 80% fall somewhere in the middle. The other 10% are going to think that I am, conceited and arrogant and ridiculous for doing that. But, so be it, because that's what I'm doing. So I don't know. Okay, let's see. The chat's going fast. My goodness. Oh, great point. Stainless says, Dana, I think one of the most helpful healing measures is to overcome the feelings of guilt. Guilt from not knowing what was going on, guilt of the mental health of the kids. Can you touch on this? Sure, I sure can. Yeah, I think that's something that everybody struggles with, because I think in large part, other people don't understand. They're like, how could you not know what was going on? Surely you had, played some part in it. It's the whole two people, it takes two to tango kind of a thing. So what did you do? What was your part in it kind of a thing? And then there's a lot of that shame and embarrassment of, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I got involved in this. I don't know how or why I stayed, and we start kind of explaining, like, okay, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, there were red flags, but like, doesn't everybody have red flags? And no one's perfect, right? And you start trying to kind of explain why you were glossing over things. But because other people are not emotionally invested in the situation, they see it crystal clear. And just like if they were making poor decisions, we would see it crystal clear because we're not emotionally invested in their decisions, right? Or at least not to the extent that they are. And so when that bubble of cognitive dissonance bursts and we really see things clearly and we're like, oh my God, this is what's been going on. I cannot believe I didn't know, or that I've been justifying it, or what have you. There is a tremendous amount of of shame and embarrassment, regret, guilt, um, especially if there's children involved. Of you know, I it's just it's so much. But I think it's important to realize, all any of us can do, we we can only do the best we can with the information that we have. And once we know better, then we can do better. So I really compare, I think it's a very accurate comparison to talk about an abusive relationship. It's along the same lines as being in a cult. Nobody joins a cult thinking that they're joining a cult. Just like nobody gets involved in an abusive relationship thinking that it's an abusive relationship. People that get involved in cults or with any extreme ideology, people that were, the Hitler, the Aryan youth, groups like that, they didn't get into it thinking that it was a problem. Very few people join extreme groups thinking it's a problem. Most people do what they do because they think that they're doing the right thing. And so, like people that get involved in cults, they know what a cult is, but like they don't think that they're in it. They think that they found this amazing group and it's all about spirituality and it's helping them, and that other people join cults, right? That they'd be able to know what a cult is when they saw it. But that's the thing, like this stuff is such a slippery downward slope that it's really difficult for anybody to see clearly when they're in it. So yeah, the guilt can be absolutely tremendous and crushing. And um but I think to realize, the shame that we carry, the embarrassment we carry is not ours to carry. It's the abusive person is the one that had the extremely crazy, absurd, ridiculous, dangerous, destructive, embarrassing behavior, not us. You know, we justified it, and but we did the best we could with the information that we had. And I really think a lot of people, I think anybody can get caught up with with an emotional manipulator. And people that think that they can't are, frankly, I think they're naive. It really takes like rock solid boundaries and a solid sense of a person's self in order to not get knocked off balance and to get dragged to hell. And most people that everybody that I've ever met that has really rock solid boundaries and a solid sense of self has developed that through, or I should say, after being abused. I have yet to come across one person who has come from like a healthy childhood that has a solid sense of self and rock solid boundaries. You know, it's like they might not get tangled. I don't know. Like I really think sometimes it's just dumb luck. Like if they were to meet the right manipulator that were to target them for the right reasons, I think they could be manipulated. So that's a great question. Elboz, thank you for the question, for the live stream donation. Says, I'm curious for your input. I find myself binge watching narcissistic abuse videos. Usually it is a trigger that prompts me, but I feel I watch at least one a day. I often wonder, am I searching for that one answer we know doesn't exist? Probably, yeah, probably. There's a stage that I think everybody goes through, myself included, where it's the kind of that info gathering stage, and that can last for a while. I mean, I became like obsessive about reading about this stuff. I mean, I picked up, here's another example. Okay, so I've written 2 books, right, in the past 2 years. And I'm not even kidding, like I probably have another 20 books that are at some stage of completion. I picked up my first book that I started on that I kind of ran out of steam on, my Red Flags of a Narcissist book. I picked it up today. I'm 75,000 words into that book, you know? And so the point of me saying this is there was a period of time for like 2 or 3 years where I was incredibly obsessive, reading about this, writing about this, uh, researching about this. I still read one book a month on it for book club. And I think it's a kind of a necessary part in healing to become to need that information. And I think you will find in time that you're once you kind of are able to give yourself enough closure, that you're more able to switch gears. So for me now, like, and I'm a handful of years out, I am able, even though I'm, neck deep in this topic every single day, I no longer feel that compulsion to like watch YouTube videos, to but even like I still read about it, I still write about it, but it's more of a, it's different now than it was then. But I think what you're saying, a lot of people really go through that. And it's, you know, it's hard because people want to have closure. It's understandable that people want to have closure, and you're not going to get closure from a narcissist or a sociopath. And so you have to kind of get your own closure. And I think most people do that by trying to get more information. And I think probably too, in part, it's trying to get that reassurance of it's not you, right? That there's nothing that you could have done different, or, you couldn't have changed them. You couldn't have changed the relationship. Like that what you really did experience was problematic. And, people kind of need those answers before they can really move on. It's, I've described it this way before, but in many ways, it's sort of like being trampled by a unicorn. It's just this bizarre, extreme situation where you're like, what on earth just happened? And then trying to make sense of that, and then trying to explain to other people. And then you find out like that a bunch of other people have been trampled by unicorns, and you're like, wait, what? Like, what is going on? It's just such an extreme, crazy making situation that it blows a person's world apart in like many different ways. So like the abuse itself blows a person apart, but then also the healing part of it it's like you're just going further down that rabbit hole. And even, you're even more misunderstood. And then you're questioning yourself, you're questioning other people, you're questioning the relationship. There's just so much confusion present. And anytime there's that degree of confusion present, a person, I think their natural inclination is going to be to try to seek out additional information to get themselves out of feeling that confused. So, but I think there does come a point too where, like, I think what helped me to move on with Jack especially was just the realization of, it was like getting tangled up with an emotional con artist, with like a dating scammer, And so I guess for me, that helped kind of put a lot of questions I had at rest. It was just like, none of this was real. Like, this was all a manufactured web in order to catch his prey. And if it hadn't been me, it would have been somebody else. And I'm sure he's cycled through a handful of partners after me. And that's just what they do. And it's not us. It's nothing you could do to change it or to help them or to, turn things around or what have you. It's them. It's them. Okay, let me see here. Okay, that's a great question. Erica says, I feel like I don't know anyone in a healthy relationship. What is healthy? And, that's a very valid point. Because, and this is something that tripped me up for a while too, is when I was out. So after, my second relationship that ended up also very similar, like a lot of similarities between the two. I was really making myself nuts because I'm like, what am I missing? Like, what am I missing? And what I realized was I had been dividing up the world in kind of two groups of people, like normal people and like toxic people. And I had a lot of friends who are, I would say, they're like, normal, right? But like that they had a lot of, kind of problematic behavior and, or stuff, I should say, that most people would be wise to like slow down and proceed with caution. So like, it's never a good idea to date somebody before they're fully divorced. It's never a good idea to date somebody that's fresh out of a divorce, like stuff like that. Right. And so for me trying to understand my own relationships, like where things went south, I had been using my other friends who had done, they had dated like right after they'd gotten divorced or right when they were separated or had done stuff that I was doing. And they were like, but see, it turned out okay for us. And, love like you've never been hurt before and throw caution to the wind and kind of and I wanted to believe that they were right because their situations had worked out fine for them. But the reality of the situation is I was picking up on red flags that they did not know about. So, so the point being, that was my aha moment of, oh, I've been divided. I've been having this very black and white view of the world. Like people were either normal or they were toxic. And then the reality is there's really three different types of people out there. There's normal, there's toxic, but then there's healthy. And to aim for healthy, and healthy in large part is going to deter, it's a very individual thing. So, and that's where the magic happens. I think that's where true healing can really take a person, is to figuring out their own level of healthy. Because in order to be healthy, you have to really know yourself and to figure out like what's healthy for you. So here's what I've come up with. Okay, so take it for what it's worth. But healthy is, so here's some parameters that I have for healthy. Is it needs to be a relationship or a friendship that's based on mutual trust and support. That needs to be there. If that's not there, there's nothing. Peace out, drive on. Like there's no point in staying. It's mutual trust and support. If you don't trust somebody, and if you guys can't support each other, and basically what I mean by supporting each other is like emotionally supporting each other. If you can't, run this a three-legged race with them, if you can't work as a team, then you're not a team. And so then what's the point, right? So mutual trust and support is critical. And then also open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication is also a must. If any one of those, the relationship is not present. And then I would say also on top of that is having healthy boundaries. So, and that takes pretty good degree of self-awareness. And it also takes practice of paying attention to kind of where your boundaries are, where knowing what your deal breakers are. That's another big thing. So like with deal breakers, if we don't have a solid sense of deal breakers before we get into something, then we can find ourselves in really it's just black ice and it's the slippery slope down. Because if we're trying to navigate like what is a problem when things are a problem and we're emotionally invested in that situation being something other than it is, if we're emotionally invested in something working out, we're going to continue denying all of the reasons that we should leave. Does that make sense? So it's really important for us to get a clear idea of what deal breakers are ahead of time. And if a person is in the thick of a problematic relationship of any kind, to ask yourself, if it's not a problem now, then when is it a problem? Like, where is your line in the sand? If this person has cheated before and you've worked through it, but they're continuing to lie or drink or use drugs, or do you see what I'm saying? Or if you think that they might be cheating again, like at what point are you willing to cut bait and drive on? What will it take? Like, do you need to catch them in bed with somebody? What kind of proof do you need? And I think once you can start answering those questions for yourself, then you're like, oh my God, yeah, I'm looking for evidence. I'm looking for like concrete proof of something that I'll probably never have. Like, I'm probably never going to catch them in bed with another person. And they've already had 3 or 4 affairs. So what is affair number 5, the deal breaker? Kind of where, and only you can answer that. So getting clear on like what your deal breakers are. The biggest takeaway I wish for all of you guys with all of this information is to really learn to turn inward and to pay attention to how you feel, because that's going to give you so much more information than like, I don't know, that's just, it's such a huge uh kind of internal GPS system that we all have, that so many of us have just kind of discounted over the years. Think, oh, logic and reason is where it's at, and logic and reason is where it's at. However, the emotional part of our brain, that whole limbic system, is it's the largest part of our brain, and it's been around for a very long time, and it's very highly developed, and our emotions are there for a reason. They're there to kind of give us messages about it's a different way of interpreting our environment. So if you can learn to tune in to yourself and figure out, okay, how do I feel when something is not for me? And not just in relationships, in general, with a career, with, hobbies, with people, with friendships, with everything across the board, how, just checking in with yourself, like, how do I feel? You know, like, how does something feel when it feels off? And how does something feel when it feels really right? And so like normally, and then, so normally when something feels right for you, you can feel really juiced and excited, but there's also a sense of calm there. So that was another aha that I had. So that a friend of mine, back when I was going through all of this, had bought me this flip book of quotes. And one of them was from Joseph Campbell, and it was "Follow your bliss." And I remember looking at that quote thinking like, yeah, I did that. And it almost got me killed. So like, now what? you know? And that really stuck with me, because I was like, all of this advice about follow your bliss and love like you'd never been hurt before, and all of this stuff, like it almost killed me. So what am I missing? And then it dawned on me, follow your bliss, but never at the expense of following your peace. So I was following my bliss with both Jack and Steve. I'm like, man, this feels so amazing. It feels so right. It feels so intense. It feels so like a fairy tale, so over the top. I didn't have peace about that from day one, either one of those situations. And I wanted so badly to believe that it was me, that I just had issues with trust or with men or with commitment, that I was glossing over all of those red flags that I felt because I wanted things to be something other than they were. So learning to tune into yourself and paying attention to how you feel when something is right for you, and how you feel when something's wrong for you. And it can be difficult to tell, because some of those feelings can overlap, right? Like that level of soulmate, deep connection, intensity, fairy tale thing can feel really, really right. But once you start going through all of this and you realize, yeah, that love bombing, that level of intensity, that level of um, whirlwind, that's not healthy. And it's always 100% problematic, because it means that neither person is seeing the other one clearly. So I hope that kind of answers your question. And then two, like figuring out what's healthy for you is knowing yourself too. So like figuring out, and like little ways and big ways. So I mean, and you can just start anywhere, like with this kind of stuff, figuring out, okay, what do you like? What do you not like? Do you like oceans? What kind of environment do you thrive in? Do you like it more like coastal, or do you like desert, or do you like, cold, like all four seasons, or do you like really, hot climate? Like, do you like Arizona, or do you like Colorado? Do you like, and that's just kind of a general thing, but really thinking like, what makes you you? Like, what do you like? Are you really into listening to talk radio, or do you like listening to music? And it doesn't, of course, doesn't have to be so black and white, but just kind of figuring out, yeah, this is what really juices me. Like, this is what I really like. And the more you can get in tune with yourself and figuring out kind of the environment that you thrive best in. And the more you'll know when things are off track because you've identified how healthy feels for you. So healthy might feel for you like, okay, yeah, I really need some alone time after I get off work, or I really need to go spend time with friends after I get off work, or I really, do you see what I'm saying? It's just getting in tune with yourself. And then finding other people. So I think too with healthy, if you can think of it, maybe a better word for this is thinking of it in terms of nourishing. So what is nourishing for you with people, places, situations, careers, events, you name it. And you know how it feels to feel nourished. Like you feel good, you have more energy, you feel vibrant. Um, you know, like that just kind of shines through when a person is nourished. When a person's in a toxic situation or environment, what is it? It's low energy, they don't feel good, they start to eventually have physical pains, they have anxiety, they have depression, they starting to, like, they look like they're getting older, um, they look unhappy, they feel like they feel toxic, you know so yeah. Okay. James says, I love music and being out in nature. Yeah. And so it's important. And it's also so important to know this about ourselves, because if you are dating or if you're trying to make friends, if we don't have a solid sense of who we are, it's really easy to get knocked off course, even by well-intended people. And kind of next thing we know, we're living this life. We're like, this is not me. Like, this is not the life that I meant to live or that I want to live. And then you kind of got to back up and go at it again, or go at it in a different direction. So, if you know that, hey, camping is a really big thing for me, listening to live music is a really big thing for me, animals are a really big thing for me, then kind of thinking, okay, like I need to be around other people that maybe that's a big thing for them too, or that are at least going to be supportive of me if that's important to me. So, Holly says, Dana, help. What is the best way to shut down hoovering? I've divorced in July and his girlfriend of a few months just dumped him. Well, I guess I would make it very clear, that he's only to contact you regarding the children, and just stick to that. And so if he's texting you, I need a friend, I'm so sad, I'm so depressed, what's, all of the guilt, the manipulation, I'm feeling suicidal, I just need somebody to talk to, nobody's ever been there like you've been there, and just kind of on and on. I miss you, I miss the good times, I miss what we had, I wish we could make it work, blah, 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 blah. See it for what it is a good start, is an important start. And then just shut it down. If he comes at you with stuff like that, just be like, we're divorced. This is not an appropriate conversation. I'm sorry that you're going through all of this. Like, you need to go contact a therapist, and just do not engage. And if he continues texting you, just delete, 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 delete. You don't need to entertain his stuff. Let's see. Yeah, Guy and Jackie says, yes, manipulative people always have an agenda. Yes, and it's always with them at the center. Yep. Stainless says, yeah, Holly, hold your boundaries in place. Don't let the snake back in. And remind yourself that's what you're dealing with. And so if you're feeling weak, if you're like, man, okay, I have a feeling he's going to come at me with guilt and, pity and all of this stuff, and I know that I'm a sucker for it, write all of this stuff down. And so it let a letter to yourself, like, dear Holly, expect him to text you in the middle of the night saying he's suicidal, showing up on your doorstep with tears in his eyes, saying that you're his only friend, wanting to talk to you, wanting to, call you, wanting to say that, oh, you're the only friend I've ever had, blah, 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 blah. And telling yourself, like, don't fall for this. You're not his therapist, you're not his mother, you're not his friend. There's a reason he's your ex-husband. And it's not healthy or appropriate for you to try to support. Like, he needs to find his own support in his own way. That's like the hostage, the kidnapper coming crying to the hostage. Like, no, dude, we're done. Like, I got free. I don't care about your problems anymore. Like, you're a dangerous person. Like, this is not, you need to go you needed to go handle your own life. Like, we're not cool. Like, we're not friends. There is no mutual trust and support. You're a snake. So I don't want anything to do with you, but saying that in a way that doesn't give them supply. Right. So just sort of like, hey, if he texts you, hey, you know what? I really feel we need to keep our conversations only about the children. I'm sorry you're going through a hard time. Sounds like you could really benefit from talking to a therapist. And if he keeps texting, just hold that boundary and don't engage every single time. So, like, if he comes at you again, I just need a friend, I need that, whatever, just say, you know what? I really feel that you need to talk to a therapist. Please do not text me with this again. If you do, I'm just going to start deleting all these texts. It's not appropriate. It's not it's not the relationship that you and I have. And just shut it down. And then also expect, yelling and name calling and you're so mean, you're so cruel, I thought you were a good Christian, forgive and forget, blah, 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 blah. Just expect all of that. So emotionally prepare yourself for that. Shannon asked, hi, Dana, is it okay to share Angie's channel with Janet? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And frankly, any channel that you think is helpful, you guys are more than welcome to share. Speaking of Angie, so yes, we're going to start doing live streams together. I don't know if I think I mentioned this last week. Yeah. So that'll be every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope to see you guys next Tuesday. We're going to go for about an hour every Tuesday, which will be fun. Great question, James. And thanks for the live stream donation. James says, Dana, is there a stage where you just feel blah? Like, I'm content with life, but I guess the anxiety I still have causes me to shut down or power save. I guess my concern with that I think that it's normal. So I think it's a normal part of recovery, but where it can get kind of concerning is if that blah feeling is more of a depression type thing. So if you're finding that, you've really kind of lost interest in doing things that you normally like to do, your sleeping is off, either too much or too little, your eating is off, either too much or too little, you just don't really have a lot of energy. And depression doesn't always come across as feeling sad. It can come across as feeling numb. It can come across in a lot of like anxiety, a lot of kind of rehashing thoughts, feeling exhausted, having to kind of put on a happy face around other people all the time. So if those are some feelings that you're having, I would encourage you to seek some professional help with like a doctor or a nurse practitioner or somebody, and let them know like how long this has been going on for. And yeah, so just some thoughts. Yeah. And James is going on. He says, yeah, is it normal to feel like when you get out of an abusive relationship to just feel blah, 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 and then you don't actually want to do anything? Because when I got out at first, I didn't want to do anything. Yeah. And that's very normal. Shannon also says yes, or watching videos, not showering for a week. You know, that kind of a thing. So yeah, and it's so difficult for any of us uh, to see our situation clearly when we're in it. It's difficult for a person to tell if how things are going for them, which is weird. That you would think that we are us, that we would be able to know, we would know if there's a problem, but it's so difficult because this stuff can be so subtle and it can happen so gradually over time. So if things are different, if your environment's different, maybe it's overly messy, or this thing, if you look around and you're like, you know what, this is not me. Like, my environment's messy. I'm not showering. I'm really wanting to retreat and not want to interact with people and all of this kind of stuff. This is again, it's very normal for a person to go through this, but it can oftentimes lead to depression that can last for a long time. So it might just be worth going and talking to somebody and kind of keeping an eye on yourself. I'm sure there's probably questionnaires online about depression, but I think for a lot of people, they think that feeling depressed means feeling really sad, and a lot of people don't experience feeling depression like that. They just it just can feel debilitating, and like you just don't have the energy to live your life, and that you don't really even want to live your life, like you're just existing. Molly asked Dana, hey, recently started dating again after a toxic relationship. I met a nice guy who was recently divorced. I am sensing he is somewhat codependent. Do I leave right away? That is a great question. So I don't, if you could tell me a little bit more in detail, like what you're experiencing. Here's my thing with people that are recently divorced is I really feel that they need a solid year before they are ready to date. And most people who are recently divorced feel like, hey man, I'm free. You know what? This was over for a long time. I'm totally ready to date again. And they don't realize like, no, you need to bench yourself. Like, you're not ready to date again. You need to process like your marriage and being divorced. And you just need to get used to being alone, because what happens more often than not is the next person either intentionally or unintentionally becomes their rebound. They're hurting, they're lonely, they're scared, they're sad. They just want a nice, safe person to kind of be around. And like I said, it might be intentional, it might be unintentional. And then kind of once they're feeling more healed, then that relationship may or may not stay together. So depending on kind of what he's doing, at the end of the day, it's about kind of you having your deal breakers and your boundaries in place. And so, if he's wanting to spend all kinds of time with you and wanting to text and call, wanting to, spend every waking hour with you, you can always nip that stuff in the bud. And I would encourage you to do that and just take things at a pace that you are comfortable with. And that goes for every single person. Like, you guys, you are in control. You set the pace of things. The people that are for you in this life, they will respect your boundaries because it's a give and take. So if they're like, I really want to see you, 6 days a week, and I really want to, talk on the phone every single night. And if you're not okay with that, and you're like, hey, you know what, I've got a life, I've got things I do and whatnot, but I'd be more than happy to hang out with you. I don't know, whatever you decide. That if they continue to fight you on that, then that's a problem, because they're not respecting your boundaries. And if a person's not respecting their boundaries, they're not respecting you. Our boundaries are a reflection of us and what we need. They're not to punish another person. They're not even necessarily to like protect us from being hurt. I think let me touch on that for a little bit. There's a lot of people out there that I feel, they get out of an abusive relationship, they start learning about boundaries and all this kind of stuff, and they feel mean or cruel or setting boundaries, and they feel like, well, I don't want to, what if I like run off a good person? Like, I don't want to be, they're scared to have boundaries because they're scared that they're going to keep out a potentially like ideal partner. And the reality is it's the exact opposite. It's because we don't have solid boundaries in place that we have all of the wrong people in our life. And getting all of this sifted and sorted out, so much of this just happened. It has to start with us knowing ourselves and what we want, and what we want coming from a healthy place. So like tuning into yourself and knowing these things about yourself. Like, what do you want? What do you not want? How does it feel? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? You know, all of that. Okay, let's see. Um, People are talking about getting sunshine, exercise, eating right. Yeah, I saw a quote the other day. I think it was on Instagram. It was so appropriate. It was like, make sure to drink water and get sunlight every day. That you're basically like a house plant, but with more complex emotions. There's a lot of truth to that. So, starting with the basics of, especially if you live, I live in Michigan. If you live in a cloudy climate where there's a lot of long gray days, taking vitamin D, making time to, get outside and get fresh air and sunlight, or cracking a window if it's too dreary outside. Nourishing yourself, eating food that nourishes your body, fruits and vegetables and fresh juice, and just, every single way, like every single way that you can nourish yourself right now, that now would be a really great time to start with that kind of stuff. Just self-love at every turn, because that's where it's about. That's what it's about. Musically says, I became really irritable for a while. I was turning into somebody I didn't want to be. I think I just wanted everyone away from me. I had to muscle myself out of that, and that was not easy. I agree completely. And let me talk a little bit about that too, because somebody made a comment. I think it was on my YouTube comments recently about anger, and how, that they're really struggling to get past the anger. And there for sure are these like emotional hurdles that come up with, like you're saying, that extreme irritability or anger. Um, and the live stream Angie and I did the other day, I was talking about how, for me, one of the things that helped was to really make a conscious, concerted effort to channel that all of that intense, all those intense feelings, the anger, that rage, into something positive. And um, that's not easy, and I just want you guys to realize, like, I might kind of joke about it now because I'm so far out from this, but it was not easy. At the time, it was very much that. So like you're saying with that irritability, like you really have to muscle your way out of it. And it literally is like you're building a new muscle, because your brain is going to want to take that path of least resistance. You're going to want to get angry. Maybe you're going to want to isolate. You're going to want to do things that are not constructive for you in the long term. And so, for me, getting so full of rage and being, okay, I got to get this out of my system somehow. I'm going to go scream. I'm going to go punch a pillow. But I also felt the need to do something constructive. I need to clean out my car and take my dog for a walk. I needed to clean out a junk drawer. I need to organize my closet. It was a way for me to really transmute that energy, not just getting it out, but actually transmuting it into something positive, and just being like, no, dude, you're not going to destroy my life. F you. I'm climbing out of this hole. And not only am I going to climb out of it, I'm going to make my life even better than what it was before. And just digging your heels in and really getting determined, and realizing that every one of those efforts, those seemingly small efforts, every junk drawer that you clean out, every article of clothing that you go through, house plant you water, everything that you do to make your life better, it's like taking a 1 pound weight and doing a bicep curl. It's like you're not going to develop that muscle overnight, but if you keep doing that, you will. And it's hard. There's going to be times where you don't feel like it, that you want to it's like that movie. If you guys remember the Never-Ending Story with, what was his name? Atreyu was the boy, and I forget his horse's name. Anyways, Artek or something. They were in the swamps of sadness, and this depression was like, and I thought it was a very really good analogy that the swamp of sadness is like this bog of quicksand, and the horse is sinking into the swamp of sadness, and the boy is trying to encourage him, like, you've got to come out of this, like, you need to keep walking, don't give up, like, don't let this overcome you. And that's how you don't let it overcome you, is it's those small actions done throughout the day, every single day. And it's just it's digging your heels in and getting stubborn and deciding that you're not going to let this ruin your life. So, yes, postmodern thing. I loved The Wolf and The Never-Ending Story and The Nothing. Yeah, it was a scary movie. Shannon says that movie creeped me out when I was little. Yeah, it was an intense movie, and it's a great movie, even to go back as an adult and watch it. It's powerful. Okay, let me scroll, see what's going on here. Yes, absolutely. Karen says, Dr. Judy compares healthy boundaries to a semi-permeable membrane. It lets the good in and it keeps the bad out. Yes, absolutely. And here's the thing, is if a person doesn't have healthy boundaries, have you ever heard the saying, healthy boundaries or fences make for good neighbors? There's a lot of truth to that. And it's the same thing with boundaries. Like, healthy boundaries make for good relationships, because if there is no shortcut to that, like, if we don't develop healthy boundaries, if we don't learn how to be assertive and know ourselves well enough, then we can't assert ourselves. If we don't know where our boundaries are, then we can't assert them, and other people won't know where they are. So, and other people aren't mind readers. And so even if the other person is, really well intentioned, if they say something or do something that hurts our feelings or that is not okay with us or oversteps in some way, if we don't let them know, then they don't know. And then on our end, then over time, like resentment, anger, frustration, irritability, all hostility, all of that stuff builds up within us, because we're thinking like, oh, well, what a jerk, and they should just know. And, and because we're not expressing it, we're just stewing about it. So some other great ways you can tell if your boundaries need some work are to pay attention to, here's a big one for me, is if I am continuing to journal about the same situation over and over again, or if I'm talking to other people. Like, if I go and I call my mother and I'm complaining about somebody, or if I call my best friend, or if I talk to Travis, if I'm talking to other people about a third person, that's a really clear signal to me that there's something off. Because what I'm really doing, what people are really doing when they're doing that, when they're not being direct with the other person, is they're not comfortable asserting themselves and it's uncomfortable, right? It's an uncomfortable conversation to have with another person one-on-one. But if we're not doing that and we're bringing somebody else, we're basically like, kind of taking off the cover. We're just venting, we're releasing steam. So instead of me talking to the person that I really should be talking to, because they're the ones that can control their actions, and you know what I mean? Like, that's the person that I need to be talking to, not my diary, not my mother, not Travis, not Danielle, not nobody else. It's that other person. And so I don't know. So I guess this kind of tuning inward and paying attention to, like, what are some warning signs for you that your boundaries are off? Um, Another one I think that is very common is for people to starting, if you're feeling like the sense of ongoing frustration of towards this other person, you know, frustration, irritation, those are like early signs that a boundary needs to be implemented. And sometimes, and in it's oftentimes in like little ways too, you know. Um, and sometimes it might not even be that somebody else pushed the boundary. It might even be that like we broke our own boundary. Like, we might have jumped in and been too quick to offer something that we couldn't follow through on, or couldn't comfortably follow through on. And then we're like, man, why did I agree to that? And then we're all irritated. So it's just, I don't know. Like, I think having that, living an authentic life involves us being honest with ourselves first and foremost about, who we are, what we want to do, what we want to be. And then once we get to that place, then we can start having that dynamic with other friends. So okay. James says, "Hey Dana, what are some good post-abusive movies?" I think my favorite one, somebody had mentioned a while back, and I hadn't thought about this movie in so long, and it's such a great movie. It's called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. And even though it's a chick flick, I think anybody can really relate to it. So I would say that one, 'cause it's about a woman. I don't want to give too much away, but like, she basically comes to this like fork in the road in her life, and then she kind of lives out these two different alternate realities. It's a really cool movie, great movie. There's that one. I really like movies that kind of show like the triumph of the human spirit. It just I think it can be a good reminder of, you can get through this, and um, just the amazing stuff people have gone through. So I don't know, movies like, what was it, the Unbroken, that came out a few years ago. I thought was an amazing story. Um, what was the one with Will Smith where he was a stockbroker? He went from homeless to being a stockbroker. I forget the name of that movie, but that was another good one of just kind of triumph. Um, I don't know if anybody has any other movies. Let me know. I'd be curious. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Shannon says, yeah, narcissists are notorious for having no boundaries, as in they step all over yours while acting friendly at first. Yes. And this book that we're going to be discussing tomorrow, uh, the Who's Pulling Your Strings, she gives some examples of that, and I think, and also how to break it. So, and it's amazing. And one of the well, actually, there's quite a few examples in there, which I really liked, that she gave kind of some more mild examples, because I think, we're so used to talking about like extreme boundary violations, extreme situations, lying, cheating, stealing, like really extreme stuff. And she gives more mild examples, which I like because it's easier. I think that stuff can really kind of fly under our radar when we've been living in extremes for so long, that mild stuff can seem mild and like, oh, that's not a problem, but really it is. And it's really important that we back things way up to that point where it is mild, that we can nip that in the bud before it becomes so extreme that you know, things get so crazy. Okay, let's see. Karen says, I like the saying that you said once in one of your videos, Dana, that the only person that respects a doormat is a person with muddy shoes. Yep. Yeah, I didn't make up that quote. Somebody else did, but I love that. I agree. You know, and I think that can be in a big aha moment for a lot of people when we may not even realize that we've been a doormat. We just kind of think, well, hey, I'm just really go with the flow. I'm just really easygoing. I just, I don't like conflict. I just want everybody to get along. Um, and we don't realize that that's a problem because that kind of stuff is really tends to be really valued by society of like, oh, they're just, they're not a problem kind of a thing. So that's a good thing. But, you know, um, it's important for people to learn how to say no and stand up for themselves and to go against the grain and to like sort of like what I was saying earlier, that whole kind of 10% of the people out there are going to love you. 10%, the other 10% are going to hate you. Anything that you do, they're not going to like. And then 80% are going to fall somewhere in the middle. And I think unfortunately, children, we all, are guilty of this, tend to kind of groom children to be compliant, where it's like, no, you just need to go along and be polite and be friendly and, just don't be a problem kind of a thing as the message that a lot of children are taught. But really some better life skills would be to teach a child how to be assertive, that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to stand up for yourself, that it's okay to have opinions, that it's okay to go against the grain. And it's important to think for yourself. Even if you're in a whole room full of people that disagree with you, if that's really what you think, then that's what you need to do. But like I said, this stuff's not like it's not talked about, not taught yet. I think it will be at some point in the near future. Yes, Dandelion Green says, yes, healthy boundaries make for good relationships. Yes, my 20-year-old daughter and I, we are very close. We were just saying that this morning. Boundaries aren't just for toxic people. Yes, absolutely. And, I think the healthier the relationship, the more assertive each person is. And they're addressing things as they continually come up. So even stuff that might not be a big deal, it's like people bring up stuff. So, it's nice. It's nice. We had quite a few issues in my support group the first year. It was really rocky. None of us knew what we were doing. And, I had a lot of administrators in the group. They were all like, outrageously thankful for all of them. But, it was just a long, rocky, hard road. And there were a lot of things that I didn't do very good, to say the least. And, communication wasn't really there. It was just very overwhelming. The group was growing really quickly. And, there was a time where things really kind of came to a head between the admins, all of us in there. And it was awful. And I really wish things had been different. I wish I would have had the leadership skills and the assertiveness skills to deal with that stuff earlier on before it got to such a point, and so that's just something like now in the support group with the admins I have now, it's a very clear understanding of like, okay, you guys, we need to talk about issues as they surface. And I don't want that to happen again, or people are walking on eggshells and are unafraid to, are afraid to have conversations, and um, that there's hurt feelings and resentment and all that stuff building up. And so it's so nice now that we have that understanding, because now stuff is brought up on a lot, much more regular basis. But it's uncomfortable. It was difficult, you know. I like that. Stainless is talking to Missouri Cowboy and says, "Yes, my therapist says angry doesn't mean loud." I like that a lot. Absolutely. And I like that. I'm gonna run with that too. One of um Another, I think, big point of differentiation is that, it's okay for a person to be upset, to be frustrated or upset, but it's never okay for them to be cruel. Because so often, and I've used this example before, but so oftentimes people will say, like, "Oh, oh, you forgot the cat food at the store." And then, their abusers, like, "You forgot to buy cat food." And then they use that as an excuse to yell or hit or what have you to their target. And then the target feels partially to blame, because we're like, "Well, it's true, I did forget to buy cat food." But at the end of the day, it's like, you can be frustrated and upset, but it does not give another person the right to, like, belittle, to berate, to yell, to scream, to call names, to do any of that. Like, abuse is never okay. Like, it's not okay. So, yeah, it's important that we realize that. Uh, and Michael, I agree. Michael says, "Dana, narcissists slowly erode your boundaries from the start." Yes, they really do. But I will tell you, after you've gone through something like this, and I think it's, I think it really just takes a person going through something like this a few times to understand how their boundaries were eroded, and to understand the process, and then also to understand what it feels like to be solid in your boundaries, because it's so easy to get knocked off center and to start acting in a way that we're not sure, like, what to do, you know so um but once you're aware of that, so this was a pointer, I think it was in the last book that we read, that really talked, and I'm a big fan of this, of giving yourself space. So, of if somebody comes to you with some sort of, like, accusation, or provoking message, or bizarre message, or what have you, or strange request, or whatnot, to buy yourself some time, especially if you're the kind of person that tends to get knocked off balance. If you're like, let me get back to you on that, or I need to check my schedule, or if you're not comfortable saying no, you're trying to kind of break that pattern and be more assertive, to buy yourself some time so that you can formulate the response that you want to formulate, and not just instantly give in out of fear, obligation, or guilt. So that's a big thing. And then I think once you can realize how bound your boundaries, if there's a pattern, like if you tend to fall for the same kind of thing, do you tend to react or respond to, like, fear, obligation, guilt, pity, sympathy, that kind of stuff? What are some of your hot buttons that have been pushed in the past? And then what can you do to do things differently in the future? Because a lot of it's just being aware of the buttons that continually get pushed. So if you know that you're a sucker for a sad story, or if your ex calls and or texts you and they're like, "I'm suicidal," or "I need help," or "You're my friend," or blah blah. Once you know where your weakness is, then you can really work towards kind of shoring up that dam so it doesn't burst again. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Yeah, Musically says, I decided to delete my Facebook account. It was incredibly therapeutic doing so because I couldn't discipline myself enough to stop looking. You all know what I mean. LOL. Yes, absolutely. And that's a really big thing. Like if you know, you're like, you know what, I'm making myself nuts. I'm looking at their Facebook all the time. I'm trying to figure out what are they up to. I'm having these obsessive thoughts and whatnot. Uh to be like, okay, I need to do what I need to do in order to stay safe and sane. And if that means getting complete, just giving myself a technology break where I'm off of Facebook or Instagram or off of the internet as a whole for a while, then that's what that means. And I think, yeah, you will find that it does bring a lot of peace into your life doing that. Pursuit of Happiness. Thank you, Trip. Says Pursuit of Happiness is that Will Smith movie where the guy goes from homeless to successful stockbroker. Yeah, I thought that was a great movie. That and oh, Missouri Cowboy says I finally figured out that was the difference between nice and enabling. Yes, that is huge, 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 huge. Okay, let's see. Um, right? Lisa says anything on Lifetime is usually pretty good for reassuring you that you made the right decision by leaving a narcissist. Yeah. She is talking about movies and says the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, also Uncle Buck. Yeah, John Candy. Oh, he was so funny. He was fantastic. Anything that he's in, I think I love. Same with Steve Martin. Just so enjoyable. Okay. God, this chat is all over the place here. I'm just scrolling up, seeing what else going on in here. Michael asks, hey, Dana, can you keep going on about the ongoing, can you keep talking about the ongoing frustration? Sure, I sure can. So I think if you think of it in terms of, we all have this emotional scale. And when a person is in alignment, when you're in alignment and you're kind of in your zone, you're feeling good, your life feels good. So things feel calm, they feel safe, they feel good. They feel good. And if things are out of alignment, some of those early warning signs are our feelings of frustration, resentment. I think, like I was saying earlier, kind of gossiping, talking to other people instead of talking to that person directly, um, venting, stewing about things. Um, that frustration tends to grow into like kind of ongoing irritation to where to the point where like you're just irritated when you see the person, you hear their name, if you're encountering them at work, like you don't want to go to work, you find yourself feeling that resentment and frustration tends to start growing into a lot of like anxiety and really rumination. Like you're thinking about them, you're in the shower, you're thinking about them, all the conversations you should have had, all the things that you wish you would have said. You're dreaming about it, you're having nightmares about it, it's impacting your sleep, it's impacting, you're eating either too much or too little. Like they start to really kind of take up a disproportionate amount of like bandwidth in your brain. So all of that kind of stuff is signs that there's been a boundary crossed, and we are the only ones that can get that boundary back into place. So those are some major early warning signs that things things are not as things are not as they should be. Things are not as ideal for us. So, if we can kind of catch that stuff early. So for example, like if you're at work and your boss is like, hey, hey Michael, can you come in and work this weekend? And hey, you know what, we got a really big project. It would be really fantastic, if you could stay. We really need you tonight, probably long hours till 8 o'clock. Everybody else is working late. So, it'd be really great if you did. And so if there's not a lot of option for you to do anything else, right? There's just kind of this pressure to. And so a lot of people might feel like obligated. Well, I guess I need to, right? Everybody else says, I guess I need to as well. And then they become resentful because they don't want to be there. And they, like that wasn't part of their job. They thought they'd be off at 5 and this is stupid. And the only reason they're there is because they have 2 other coworkers that, can't pull their own weight. And so all of this, then this just starts, building up and stewing and what have you. So that's kind of like a smaller example. So another way to handle that situation, instead of like begrudgingly agreeing and being like, okay, I guess I'll stay until 8 o'clock every night this week and then work weekends, would be to say some form of no, or to try to negotiate that situation. Like if it's a project and it absolutely has to be done and it's just, there's no other way of getting around it, to say something like, and figuring out like what works best for you. So maybe you're like, you know what, I can't stay late tonight. I already have plans, but I can stay late tomorrow night, or I can come in early tomorrow, or what, and trying to kind of fit their request into what works best for you. And if none of it works, just saying like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do any of this. Like this does not work for me. And then realizing, if that creates tension and stress in your work environment, or if they're threatening you getting fired, then, then so be it. Then you cross that bridge when you get to it. So it's just figuring out kind of where things work for you and how, you know what I mean? Like it's just staying kind of flexible in your approach and figuring it out. I mean, I had a similar situation at work where it was very common. Like we didn't take breaks and we had working lunches the vast majority of the time. And it was just expected, we were nurses. And even though weren't getting paid, for our break time, or like, we had an hour off and 2 breaks a day, and like, we didn't get paid during that time. But it was still just kind of understood, like, you're just always, if somebody needs you, that you're there, even if you're working, you're not getting paid for it, which is ridiculous. And so, it took me a little while to start kind of reining that back in and just say, you know what, you guys, because I really did. I liked a lot of my coworkers. I'm like, I love you guys, but I am shutting my office door and I'm going to open it in an hour. Please do not, it can wait. Like whatever, unless the building is on fire. And even then, like, do not knock on my door. So, and people are going to think that you're mean and cruel at first. And they're probably going to have hurt feelings. Like I said, a lot of my coworkers, I really liked them and I wanted to work as a team. And I knew that they had, we had patients in crisis, and sometimes it wasn't an urgent issue, but it was difficult to put my foot down and just say, you know what, then like if it's an urgent issue, they need to call 911. Like I can't keep pushing the line every single time because I'm feeling resentful and frustrated, and I don't want to come into a job and feel that way every single day. So it was so great, because once we began having that open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, things began clicking into place. We began doing things differently. People were like, yeah, wait, what are we doing? Like, I'm going to take a lunch too. This is nuts. And things started becoming, I think, a lot healthier across the board, because that communication was improving across the board. And so, but I think a lot of people probably had some hurt feelings at first. And it was difficult at first to, be assertive, but it takes time. It takes practice is what it does. It takes practice, and it takes practice being uncomfortable and sticking to your guns and not caving in. Sable is talking about the Sliding Doors movie and says, I love Gwyneth Paltrow. I will check it out. I think you're going to love that movie. It's a great movie. Great, great movie. I like that. Dandelion says, yes. Brene Brown says, choose discomfort over resentment. Yes. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Court Shannon asks, do you have any advice on stopping self-sabotage? Well, I think, can you elaborate a little bit more on self-sabotage and in what way? Because, okay, and then and then Shannon asked, hey, Dana, can you talk more about a safety plan, which is what Stainless had said. So while I'm waiting to hear more about self-sabotage, let's talk about a safety plan. So developing a safety plan, if you know that you're dealing with a person who is dangerous, destructive, potentially deadly, has talked about hurting you in the past, that, or maybe that you feel is really unpredictable and they're not going to take it well if you leave, it really helps to start getting a plan in place and to think, because part of it too, part of fear is it really freezes our brain, and it really can make a person feel even more powerless over the situation because they just become so overwhelmed with trying to get out of it that they don't know how to even start. And so coming up with a safety plan, is kind of thinking this stuff through as much as you can in time. So if you can give yourself enough time to kind of come up with the plan. So I think on my website, I know in my first book, I talk about this. My first book is called Start Here. It's on Amazon. You can search my name, Dana Morningstar, and see both of the books. But there's a part in there about safety planning. I think there's also, I did an article about it on my website, which is also thriveafterabuse.com. But so safety plan, thinking about how could this all go down for you? So what all would you need to take if you were going to leave? Or I'm a big fan of planning, like preparing for the worst and then hoping for the best. So let's say, for example, you work from home and I don't know, you're a tech person, right? And you've got all this computer equipment and expensive equipment. This is your livelihood. And you're with a really destructive, abusive, unpredictable person. If I were you in a situation like that, I would slowly start moving out all of your expensive stuff and or maybe even getting homeowners insurance actually to cover all of this stuff in case they just start destroying stuff. But moving out everything of value that you can a little bit at a time, putting cash money like aside in a place that they can't see it, getting copies of all the keys, copies of important papers, getting that plan in place. Because when an abusive person or a controlling person starts to lose that power and control, they become outraged, because remember, in their mind, they're not the problem, we are. So they're feeling even more victimized. Like, how dare you leave me? Everything nobody else is going to put up with what I've put up with you. You're dealing with a person who's got really twisted wiring. Okay, so they are not seeing the situation correctly, like at all. They don't think that they're abusive. They don't see anything wrong with their actions. They feel justified and entitled to treat other people the way that they do. This is what makes them so incredibly dangerous, because they can become incredibly violent and feel completely justified. It's like I was saying earlier that, oh, you forgot to buy cat food, and then they beat the person up. Or, oh, your coworker texted you about some important project, then they, beat up their target. Oh, you're cheating on me, you're doing X, Y, and Z. And it's like, you can't even argue, you can't even reason with them because they're not reasonable people. They've constructed this whole narrative in their head about what's going on, and half of it's stuff they're projecting onto the target because it's stuff that they're doing. So, I mean, it's so tangled and twisted that it's trying to be calm and reasonable and rational with an unreasonable, irrational person's not going to get you very far. And it can really put you in harm's way. So, because they might feel gaslighted by us telling the truth of, no, you're cheating on me, you're doing this, you're doing that. And then they're just like, why are you looking at my phone? Why are you doing this? You're crazy. You're jealous. You're paranoid. You're manipulative. You can't argue with a delusional, pathological person. It's like arguing with a really, just twisted 2-year-old. It's bizarre. So, doing what you need to do to stay safe and sane as much as possible, I guess, as for when you leave. And I would also encourage you, the day that you drop the news that you're leaving is the day that you move out. I wouldn't recommend staying under the same roof because it's probably not going to end well. And at least here in the United States, you can call non-emergency police and ask them to do a civil standby while you move your stuff out. But I would really encourage people, get as much of the valuable stuff out and realize that you're probably gonna have to start just cutting bait with a lot of stuff and just figure out, okay, what's important, what's not, and the stuff that's not, you can be replaced. But keep yourself safe and sane. Don't meet with them alone ever again anywhere. Don't meet them in a parking lot. Don't meet them back at the old house. Don't meet them in, the driveway to talk. Don't be alone with them. These people are very unpredictable and they can become very dangerous on a dime. So, you want to meet in a public place like a McDonald's or an IHOP or at your attorney's office. If you can have the police there to do a civil standby, you could even ask the police, like, hey, they're gonna drop some stuff off. We're meeting in the parking lot at IHOP. Can you just please kind of be around and make it seem like you're not doing a civil standby? I don't want to enrage them, but I just kind of want somebody here if I need somebody. Most police will do that. Yeah, Missouri Cowboy saying, amen, Dana. Be safe, protect your life. Stuff and things can be replaced or lived without. Dead is dead. Yes, absolutely. Okay, great question, Noah. Noah says, hey, Dana, I asked this question last week, but I don't think you saw it. I didn't, sorry. Can you explain what makes someone seek clarity from an emotional manipulator? Thank you for all you do. So I think what it is that, and it makes sense, right? If a person is confused, if a person is in a dynamic of any kind, work, friends, significant other, if we're confused by someone's actions, it's very common for them to go to that person to be like, you know what, I'm really confused by this. And can you explain? Thinking, if we're making the mistake of thinking that we are with somebody that's another normal, decent person who's going to have open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, if we're mistaking them for us, then we're going to continue going to them. It takes a while for a person to realize, oh no, they're not being honest. They're driven by dominance and deceit, and they're driven by this power and control and manipulation and craziness. Normal, decent people just don't tend to think that way. And so for us, it takes a while to realize, oh, I was in love with this person, so I thought that they felt the same way. And so when, I thought we had this open, honest relationship, and obviously we don't. And I really thought that there was like a good explanation for all of the squirrely behavior and the stuff that didn't add up. But then of course, knowing what we all know now, right? Like once you're out of it and you realize, oh my God, here I am being manipulated, turning to the manipulator for clarity. And of course, you can see how that would get a person nowhere, because the manipulator is not, their goal isn't to have open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. Their goal is to continue to manipulate, because they're driven by dominance and deceit. But until we realize that, you know, like, it's going to keep a person stuck in that cycle. And I think too, oftentimes if a person is holding on to hope that the relationship, that there is a good excuse, they want a good like, give me, please give me some crumbs of an explanation that can justify your squirrely behavior or the abuse or whatever it is that they're doing. Give me some sort of crumb of hope to hang on, because I don't want to leave. I want to stay. I want things to work, but man, you're really making it difficult for me. Like, you're continuing to lie and cheat and steal and deceive and you know, do all of this stuff, but I want to believe that this time is different. Like, basically what we're doing is like, please continue to lie to me because I don't want to leave. I want to hold on to the fantasy, but we're not aware that that's what we're doing, because we're not aware that we're being manipulated. So yeah, it takes a while for a person to just see the situation clearly. Let's see. Did anybody see? I'm hoping that she talked more about self-sabotage. If anybody could repost that in like all caps so I can see it, that would be awesome. Okay. Oh, well, good. Guy and Jackie says, wow, did I ever need to hear you tonight, Dana? You make me feel like I'm not really crazy after all. Well, good deal. Yeah, you're not. You're not, and that's the beauty of it, is that your inner self, like your authentic self, never goes away. It is always there, no matter what a person's been through. And so getting back on track for you, rediscovering you, you will know how it feels when you start to have peace in your life, you start to have calm, you start to feel centered, you start to feel grounded. And so all of these feelings of like irritation, agitation, something's off, mental anguish, confusion, introspection, is it me? Is it them? What's going on? I'm confused. When you just feel like you're lost in the fog, none of that's normal. Those are all signs that you're in a problematic situation. And so start backing things up a bit, doing whatever you need to do, getting some distance from whatever's continuing to cause all of those feelings of mental anguish and panic and confusion. Find your center. Find your center. You know the truth by the way that it feels. You know what's right for you by the way that it feels. Find that. Some people might find it, and it can be difficult, if a person's been abused and if they grew up in abuse and they might not have a person that they feel that way around. You might feel that way in other areas. Maybe if you're creative, you feel that with art or with music, or maybe, or even like if you're really into numbers, if you feel that level of certainty and calm with being around numbers, or you know anything in your life that kind of makes you feel centered and grounded. Spend time in that zone and pay attention to how you feel when you're in that. And then when you're around other people that are in that zone and that you feel good around, pay attention to how you feel. Odds are you feel nourished, you feel calm, you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you feel like you can breathe, you feel like you can be yourself. That's the zone for you. Janet, thank you for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Okay, scrolling for. Oh my gosh, thank you, Bear. Thanks for the live stream donation. It says 5-year anniversary of my discard tomorrow. Thank you so much for helping me rebuild my life. Dude, you are so welcome. 5 years. That's powerful stuff, man. Congratulations. Self-sabotage. Where did that go? So curious. Actually, okay, so while I'm still looking for that, Guy and Jackie says, "Holy crap, Dana, those are the exact words he used on me. How dare you? Like, shame on you for leaving." Yeah, and it's the twisted wiring. The book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship by Patricia Evans, I think she really did just a great job describing kind of that abusive person mindset. And she compares it to a child with a teddy bear. Like for a child, that teddy bear is an extension of themselves, right? That teddy bear only acts and thinks like they do because that teddy bear is an extension of them. With abusive people, it's very much the same way. So it's the same way with their children, with and any other targets in their life, their spouse, their whoever. And they're outraged when somebody acts in a way that they don't think or feel. So if they're like, I, so that what they start doing is if a person's acting outside of the way that they think they should act, or if they expect them to act, then what they start doing is they start grinding down those edges. If you disagree with them, if you have your own political views, your own and that's maybe not the best example because I think the world is really heated right now about stuff like, and rightly so for stuff like that. But even still, political views, religious views, parenting views, or and sometimes that stuff can spill over into stuff where you're like, I can't even begin to anticipate what this person thinks. So, like for example, if you're with somebody, and this is when things get like really taken to a point of hyper anxiety because you're like, I can't even begin to anticipate like what's going to set this person off. So let's say, for example, it's a Friday night and it's in July, and you guys are going to watch a movie and you decide, and you normally have pizza on Friday night, and you bake a pizza, and they come home and they get all upset. Oh, it's 110 degrees in here. What are you doing baking pizza? And don't you know it's July? And and you're so stupid. And what kind of idiot bakes a pizza in July? And blah blah blah. And they're all upset. And to the target of that, you might be thinking, okay, I guess there's a kernel. Yeah, the house is really hot. I had to open the windows. I've got the air on. But, we normally have pizza and it's movie night. But then we feel bad, right? Like, okay, I guess I should have known better. But then next week, they come home and next Friday night, then there's no pizza. And then they get all upset. Why isn't there pizza? We have pizza every single Friday night. And then you're like, you know what? I can't win. That kind of stuff. Because it's like you're just expected to read their mind. And because, what they like, none of us can do that, right? Like whatever they want or need or what have you is going to just continue to change. Like everybody's wants and needs continue to change. So that's that whole level of crazy making where a person starts walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate their behavior, but because their behavior and their worldview and all of this keeps changing, there is no pleasing them. But in their mind, it's just so obvious. Well, of course it's so obvious to them because it's them, right? Like they know what their wants and needs are, but they are making the mistake that other people are like teddy bears, that we're just this extension of them, and that we should just somehow know all of this stuff all of the time, and that we're mean and bad if we don't. So that's what I'm saying. Like you cannot, and that's the whole another level of crazy that you can't even argue with. And when people talk about trying to change an abusive person, and I talk about it's not the behavior, it's the mindset. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, that's a major work to try to get under that hood and, reconfigure that wiring. And that's why it's next to impossible, because you can address the behavior one by one. Hey, don't yell at me for the pizza. It's not okay for you to yell at me. It's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to be abusive, blah, blah, blah. It's like playing whack-a-mole. So you address this one behavior, you whack it. Okay, you got that. But then boom, boom, it keeps popping up. And the reason it keeps popping up is because it's their mindset. It's power and control, and it's a way that they interact with the whole world. Everybody is a teddy bear. It's all about them all of the time. And to undo that, and I mean, for like to even have a hope that a person could undo something like that, the person would have to be really highly motivated to change. And most people that have that mindset aren't motivated at all to change because they don't understand that there's a problem. So you can see how difficult that can be. Okay, let's see if scroll down, so any clarity on the self-sabotage thing. Yep, Shannon says, yep, pizza, no pizza. If they feel like yelling, they're going to be yelling. If it wasn't pizza, it would be something. Yes. Shannon, okay, great question. Says, could you give a brief Cliff Notes version on what emotional incest is? So to me, emotional incest is when you have really blurred roles between parent and child as far as kind of emotional information and responsibility. So a lot of like oversharing, making a parent making a child responsible for their emotional needs, treating, a lot of like parentification, turning the child into the parent, um, turning the child into an adult, placing a lot of adult responsibilities on the child. It's just this real sick, twisted, blurred, inappropriate boundaries. Talking to a child about things that are not age appropriate, talking to them about I don't know, sex and bills and money and very adult topics, and just putting a child in an inappropriate situation, I guess, is kind of like the larger umbrella to all of that. Linda asks, can you address the narcissistic stare? So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. So a lot of people will say there's kind of just that, there's like a psychopathic stare or psychopathic gaze or sometimes narcissistic look that a person gets. And it can, I think there's at least two ways that come to mind that happens. So the first way is when a person first meets them, there's that level of intensity, and it's like their eyes are locked on you. It's like you really feel like you're a target, but it can feel very flattering. So actually, I think probably the best example of this is some of these old vampire movies with like Bela Lugosi, when he's a vampire and he's just got that like level of like intense eye contact, and he's very focused on his victim, right? And the victim just is kind of in this trance of, they're just kind of overcome with all of this, and they kind of just get lured in by the vampire. With narcissists, it's very similar, except that they tend to be, they can either use a lot of charm or they use intensity. And that intensity can be really that whirlwind situation, moving very quickly, promises of this ideal future, really kind of dangling this bait in front of the target. And so the target might feel like, man, I've really met my soulmate. But what's really going on is you've met an emotional con artist who's morphing into everything that you've ever wanted to lure you into their web. So there's that kind of first type of gaze, but then there's that gaze where that oftentimes you might see in a predator, either after they've been challenged or confronted in some sort of way, or when they start to lose power and control. People will talk about that in terms of, I feel like I'm dealing with a demon or with the devil himself or pure evil. their eyes turned black. It was terrifying. I've never experienced it evil. They're describing it in very, very dark, sinister, terrifying type terms. I've experienced this myself too. And I think here's what I think it is, like scientifically, what I think it is when a person goes into attack mode, any of us goes into attack mode, your pupils dilate. And so they get really big. And so you've got all of this adrenaline going through your system. And so, your pupils get really big. There's so that, is why a person's eyes get dark. There's that sense of loss of humanity, because what we tend to associate with being human is empathy. It's that connection to another person. And when any person goes into fight mode, if they're feeling attacked, that empathy is gone. There is no empathy. All of a sudden, this person's become the enemy and they go on attack. And so but for us, it doesn't register, because we're like, but I'm not the enemy. I'm their wife, right? Or I'm their friend, or I'm a coworker. Like, what the hell? Like, this person just gave me this look like they wanted to kill me, and I don't even know what I did or said. So for us, it can feel really confusing, because we're like, this person has no reason to feel this way about me, or it seems to be a very extreme reaction. But for them, because they're all about power and control, and their main response to everything is fight. There is no empathy, there is no remorse, there is no other types of ways of handling situations or even understanding the world. For them, it's all about fight, and it's all about themselves. So, and it's just staring somebody down. Yeah. I think if you can see it for what it is, and if you can not let it intimidate you, and just realize, okay, this person's in fight. They're aggressive. They're feeling hostile. They could potentially attack. They're in fight mode. You're not dealing with a sane, reasonable, rational person. Like, now is not the time to try to have a conversation with them or to try to get them to calm down. Like, you need to get out of their way. And, their primitive part of their brain is taken over, and you cannot use logic and reason with the person who's the amygdala is in charge. So, but yes, it's terrifying. And I think too, because of when we experience that, and it is so, just everything about narcissists and sociopaths tends to be intense, and it tends to be unlike anything that we might have ever encountered before. When a person experiences something like this, understandably so, they're like, okay, I feel like I have this psychic connection to this person. I feel like they know what I'm thinking, that they know where I am, that, like, it's just, they show up. It's just terrifying. And so I think we can be very quick to assign kind of these supernatural powers to them. But I think a lot of this stuff is just subconscious. I think because they're on our mind a lot, because we're afraid. And when a human brain is afraid of something, it's continually scanning its environment to seek out that thing that it's afraid of. If you hear, if you kind of the old part of our brain, like if you hear a twig snap, your brain's thinking, okay, is this going to be a lion? But when we've had a predator, a real life predator, and we're not in the woods, right, or in the jungle, we're continually scanning for anything that could potentially be like them. But also too, if we're not sure what to be on the lookout for, this is when people start linking up all kinds of like incorrect cause and effect. And then this contributes to that hypervigilance, and they might not even know why. So if they don't know that it's the abusive, that the behavior is the problem, right? That it's this abusive mindset, it's this abusive behavior that's the problem, they might start doing things like avoiding all men if their ex was a man, or avoiding all redheads, or all Scorpios, or all attorneys, or all Catholics, or you name it. And they start linking this, or they might start overlapping, right? Like, okay, from here on out, I'm never going to date or a short Latin woman who's, a bartender. And so then they're staying away, who drives a pickup truck, like they're staying away from like all of these things. And so anytime that they see any one of those elements that was involved in that painful experience, that painful experience is going to be back on their mind to some degree, and they might not even realize it. And so then if that abusive person does resurface to us, our conscious mind, it might feel like we have this deep connection to them, or what have you. But it's like, no, all of this stuff has been running at a deeper level on our brain, like nonstop. We just it hasn't been brought to our awareness yet. And now it has been. Does that make sense? So, don't give these people more power than they deserve. Mark says, Dana, these people, they are demons. I agree in the sense that I think their behavior is definitely, and it's wicked, right? It's evil, and it's lines right up there with being demonic. I mean, it's really wicked, awful stuff. I think if anything, if we want to go like religious about this, I think that demons were, I think people like this have existed since, probably the dawn of time. This is not a new thing. And my guess is that in old religious texts, this is how they were describing people like this, because they and maybe they're right. I mean, hell, I don't know. Like, maybe they really are demons. I don't know. But my guess would be that this is their way of describing things that weren't that we didn't know about, how people kind of process trauma or grow up in environments like this, or brain abnormalities, or or what have you. And so it was just kind of a sign to, like, well, these people are just demons. But obviously, like biblical texts and stuff like that, they're describing this exact same behavior. So it's been around for a long time. I think it's just we're calling it different things. But yeah, but potato, whatever you want to call it, just know that it's out there and it exists, and just stay away from it. Interesting. Mel says people are talking about micro expressions. The worst micro expression I saw from my ex-partner was a sick, twisted smile at calling out that he was the source of the drama, not me. And for once I had clarity on what game was going on. Yeah, it's really wild. So like when you do get those, like their mask slips a little bit, or you do get those micro expressions, mainly of the ones that you can kind of see are contempt, in disgust, which tend to kind of register the same way. So like a person, like if you think about it, like you're disgusted, like you smell putrid milk, or you're just like that kind of a face, that disgust, or contempt, like, ugh. They did a study. There was a study done a while back. They videoed couples that I think I think they were recently married, and they did and they followed them for, I don't know, 20 years. And they were trying to figure out, okay, what are some similarities between couples that stay married and couples that divorce? And the number one commonality that they found was that the couples that they had videoed had the micro expressions of either contempt or disgust for each other. And those were the couples that got divorced. It had nothing to do with religion, finances, children, communication, anything. It was that there were these undercurrents of disgust or contempt for each other. At least one person to the other. They both didn't need to have it, but just one person had to have it. That's very interesting. So yeah, paying attention to like subtle facial expressions. I mean, Mel was saying, you just kind of got this like little twisted smile, and you're like, wait, what is that? That's weird. Or saying certain little things where it just dawns on you, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm caught up in a game. and I see it clear as day, and I'm out. Okay, let's see here. Tom saying, I experienced the duping delight where she lied about cheating on me just to hurt me. Kind of worse in a way. Oh, totally. Totally. There's nothing worse than that level of maliciousness of, cheating is bad enough, right? But to realize this other person was like intentionally going out to just be hateful and hurtful is it's so extra. Like it's so unnecessary and over the top. And yeah, so that duping delight, that's also known as that narcissistic smirk. And it literally is kind of like a little Mona Lisa smile. It's that little like I've got a secret, or like just a like I pulled one over on you, ha ha ha, kind of a thing. And it is, when you see it, it's really unsettling because it's like I cannot believe this person is smirking about something that's so, like, who would do something like this? Like, who would cause another person, pain like this? Like, what, it's just wow. Yep. Guy and Jackie says, yeah, the smirk really gives them away. Sable says, yes, Dana, the Mona Lisa smile. Yeah. And then it makes me wonder, like, why Leonardo painted her like that. That painting, the Mona Lisa, just absolutely fascinates me as to what is going on and what he's hiding. I really feel like it is a clue to something else. I don't even think that the reason he carried around that painting, I don't think it was because it was such a great painting. I think it was because it has hidden information in it. That's my conspiracy theory for the evening. So weird. And totally off topic. I'm drinking my yogi tea. I made a point to notice tonight if it's the mint kind or the regular kind, and it's the mint kind. And I will tell you that I really don't taste a huge difference. So just for what that's worth. Both kinds are delicious. Actually, I guess this is a little bit more minty than the other one, but it's still, I don't think I would notice had I not looked at the tea bag. I am so lost without my phone. I have no idea what time it is. And hold on a second. Hey, Travis. Travis. Shoot. He's downstairs. I have no idea. Okay, it's 9:40 Central Time. Okay, what is that? That's 10:40. So it's been 2 hours. Hey, can you grab my phone? Thank you. I've lost without my timer. I have no idea. I could be on here until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you. Okay, so what did we figure? So we've got about I don't even know what. It's 10:40. We start at 8:30, so we're going 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. Okay, got a plan. Okay. Oh yeah. Tom says, Dana, have you heard of a narcissist not cheating, but lying and saying that they did just to hurt the target? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a pathological person, so it's not uncommon for them to try to inflict pain. It's weird. I dated a guy briefly who ended up turning out to be verbally and emotionally abusive and a narcissist, and it was really wild. He would do these things, like he would try to triangulate, and even from day one, like he would triangulate me with these other women, but even from day one, I was like, I don't even think these other women exist. And I'm not a naturally jealous person. So it took me a while to catch on to like, I'm feeling like this emotion of jealousy is being provoked in me. Like, why does he keep telling me about all these other women? And, um, but yeah, so it's weird. Like they just do weird stuff sometimes. And it's to make themselves feel smug and superior. It's to try to build up their, you know, broken ego is what it is. Okay. Oh, thank you, Susan. I saw the study, but I didn't remember who it was from. She says the predictability of successful marriages as shown by expressions of contempt is the work of John Gottman and his Love Lab at the University of Washington. Very cool. Thank you. You can find videos. I fell down some hole on YouTube, and that's how I even came across it. There's videos of the studies that they did with the videos of the participants, so you can see the different facial expressions. Kiara says, Dana, how do you cut off a toxic person, a narcissist, or aggressive codependent without going cold turkey and not telling them why? And am I being unfair if I just cut them off cold turkey? If a person is, I'm a big fan of, if a person is dangerous or destructive to you, then you just need to do what you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane. So if a person's hurtful to you, you don't owe them anything. And so I wouldn't worry about fairness because they violated that kind of social contract first by being hurtful or abusive or exploitative. So I wouldn't feel bad about that, but you know, going cold turkey can tend to really bring out rage in them because they've all of a sudden lost control. And then it's that level of entitlement, all of that stuff gets triggered and they're like, how dare you? They might become very obsessive, calling, texting, showing up at your house, that kind of stuff if you go cold turkey. So if you, and it totally depends on your situation, but if you're concerned about how they might handle it, but you want to distance yourself, another option might be to blame it on yourself. I know that might not sound healthy and like, oh, well, it's not being assertive and not having boundaries and what have you. But sometimes I think it's a game and sometimes you have to play it. So, and it tends to go over better when you're dealing with a person like that, to pretend to blame it on yourself and just say, you know what, I've got a lot going on right now. I just can't, I'm not able to date anybody. And, there's a lot, you're a great guy, or I wish we could be friends. I'm just super busy. And, whatever, like you just put it all 100% on you, confronting them about their behavior, being like, you know what, you're abusive and you're this and you're that, and I'm out of here. And that's not okay with me. That's throwing fuel on the fire. So I would put it on you and just, I'm really busy. I'm just not emotionally available. They can't argue with that. So you're not making it about them. You're making it about you. And you're putting it in a way that a person, like, what are they going to say to that? If you're like, you know what, I'm just, I'm emotionally just unavailable. I'm just not ready for a relationship. And, I feel like I just need to be on my own. I've got some stuff to work through, blah, 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 whatever, you know? And if they keep trying to push the issue of, oh, I want to be with you. I want to be in your life. I want to be friends. Just be like, you know what? My therapist, you can blame it on your therapist. or whatnot, and just say, I really feel like I need to take time for myself. My therapist really feels that I just need to be alone to work through this stuff, or blame it on PTSD. Just say, what, I can't be around other people, and I just don't think this is a good thing for me right now. In if I'm a big fan of being truthful and like walking on our authenticity, but I think there's a time and place. Like if you are in a dangerous situation, like you need to do whatever you need to do in order to stay safe. And sometimes that might mean taking blaming yourself when it's not even about you, when it's about them. But if that's going to keep you the safest, then that's what you need to do. Okay, let me see. I'm so curious to know about the self-sabotage, what that question was about. I'm just going to talk about self-sabotage. And then whoever asks the question, please just feel free to chime in on it. So, okay. So self-sabotage. Here's how I am. Okay, so there's two main ways that come to mind when I think about self-sabotage. The first way is, um, actually, no, that's not really self-sabotage. That would be self-harm. Okay, let me just talk about the way that I'm really thinking of, that I think a lot of people tend to fall into. Okay, when it comes to quote unquote self-sabotage, is I see a lot of people, myself included, who've gotten out of abusive relationships, and then they are terrified to date, and then they start dating again, and they feel like something's off in that relationship, or it's maybe not the right relationship for them. And so they are trying to push they're trying to end it, right? Or they're not even trying to end it. Maybe they feel like they're trying to end it. But really, it's like that what's really going on is like the healthiest part of themselves is saying, this is not for you. But because they're doubting that, because abuse is like taking a traumatic situation of any kind, is like taking a magnet to a person's internal compass. And it's just that needle is just spinning, and they don't know, it takes a while for a person to find their true north again. And so because they're so lost in this, and they don't, on some level they realize it, right? Like you're realizing, like, I don't know if I trust myself. I don't know if I trust my judgment. I don't know if I trust, men or women or dating or other people or whatnot. Like, such a degree of mistrust in an environment is a great sign that we don't trust ourselves to perceive information accurately. And so it's a good if a person's feeling that lost, they're like, I don't know who to trust or what's going on or how I feel or any of that. At that point, seriously, just bench yourself, because you're not ready to date. You're not ready to date. And it's really important for a person to be able to learn to trust their judgment and to realize that you have the power and that you can keep yourself safe. And so if you come across another abusive person, that it just going slow and knowing how problematic behavior feels for you. And then if something starts to surface, you can either be assertive or, use your boundaries, or if it continues, then use your deal breakers. Like, you're in charge. You don't have to hang on. You've seen this movie before. You don't need to stay here and wait until the end to get up and leave. You've been down this road before. You don't like where it goes. So I think just knowing that is a big part. But a lot of people, they're like, "Oh man, I've dated a few people since my last relationship, but I just have a hard time trusting, and I think I have a fear of commitment, and I think I'm self-sabotaging myself because I'm seeing red flags in everybody." And what that tells me is, okay, you're seeing problematic behavior for what it is. This goes back to getting centered, getting grounded. How do you feel? That's a concept from the book Psychopath Free. Getting your constant. Do you have that person in your life? Ideally, it would be a person. Do you have a person in your life that you feel solid around? Like, you feel grounded, you feel centered, you feel safe, you're not you don't have that confusion, you don't have that introspection, you're not wondering, is it them, is it me, is it what's going on? Like, you're not there's no mental anguish involved. Like, you're feeling safe, you're feeling solid, you're feeling certain, you're feeling safe. And think about that person. Use that as your guideline. So if you start feeling emotionally all over the place, it's not you. Reel it back. Think about how you feel when you're with that constant. So it's not you, it's them. You're feeling this way around this other person for a reason. And I would encourage you to not let anybody talk you out of this, because I see this, I've had this happen to me before too. A lot of other people, if they're not picking up on the same red flags that you're picking up on, or even if they are, people, it's amazing the stuff people will justify. Oh, well, yeah, okay. He says he's separated, but lots of people date when they're separated and it's okay. And, you thought that he said he had no kids, but he really has 3 kids, and you must have misheard him, and all kinds of stuff like that. Like, this goes back to, you've been down this road before, you've seen this movie. You don't need to wait until the very end to get up and leave. Like, these are the signs. And so if you're starting to feel like something's off, if you're not uncomfortable, leaving a situation because you're seeing or feeling red flags isn't you self-sabotaging. It's you're waking up to what problematic behavior is. And the reason that you're so uncertain about it is because so many of us tend to feel like, well, no, I really need concrete proof that it is in fact indeed a problem before I leave. I need to wait until they cheat, and I need to wait until I catch them in bed with somebody else, or I need to wait until God knows, like, they siphon funds from me, or they give me an STD, or that's what I was talking about earlier, is get clear on, like, what proof do you need? Because if we're waiting around until we get an STD, until somebody else turns up pregnant, if we've got that concrete proof that yes, in fact, they were cheating, we've waited way too long. So, back things way up. Squirrely behavior is a reason to leave. Mental anguish is a reason to leave. Perpetual confusion is a reason to leave. Um, Ongoing introspection, which goes hand in hand with squirrely behavior, is a reason to leave. If there's not that sense of mutual trust and support, that's a reason to leave. Because if it's not mutual, if it's only one way, right? You're always there to trust and support them, but they can't even give you honesty. Forget about loyalty. They can't even give you honesty. You're in a wrong relationship. You're not in a relationship. You're just being manipulated and used. If if there's not that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, that's a reason to leave. You don't need to wait until they start with the name calling, or the hitting, or the punching, or the threats, or the craziness. So back it way up. So that's what I wanted to say about the whole self-sabotage, because I see a lot of people really start doubting. It's normal. You start doubting yourself after abuse, and you think, I must just be self-sabotaging because I can't seem to stay with a person because I see all these red flags. And it's like, no, you're just, what's going on is you're waking up to all this stuff now, and you're seeing it, whereas before you didn't see it until it got really extreme. Tom's asked, squirrely equals triangulation, right? It can. Squirrely is anything that's just squirrely. Could be, text messages, just things that don't add up, text messages really late at night that they're saying that's from their boss, or maybe it even is their boss. And you're like, why is your boss texting you at 11 o'clock at night? Or sexy pictures from strangers, or kind of vague posts on Facebook that just, it's stuff that you just think that's weird, you know? Um, just, I don't know. I think you just kind of know it when you see it, and they can't really give you a solid explanation as to what they're doing, or they get really defensive. Oh, I just have a lot of friends. I have a lot of guy friends, or female friends. I think this is a situation. I think a lot of well, men probably come across it too, but women, I think, really do, is like, a man's constantly cheating and there's all these other women and they're friending all these other women on Facebook, and they don't want to change their Facebook status to them being in a relationship, and they don't want to post pictures of their partner, and it's like they're hiding their partner, or they um don't, they're getting sexy pictures from strange women, and or they're just being flirty, or they have fake accounts and they have fake email, and it's just squirrely. Normal people don't do stuff like that. People with solid intentions don't do stuff like that. People that want to stay in a happy, healthy relationship don't do stuff like that. Yeah. Nikki says, yeah, my ex said it was perfectly normal to text female coworkers all the time. And of course they're going to say that, right? Because they want us off their back. But, and this goes back to us trying to not get clarity from them, and for us to make it about us. Like, where are your deal breakers? That was a very big game changer for me, was flipping it around, because you will run yourself ragged trying to get answers and clarity and honesty from a person who is trying to manipulate and deceive and not be honest, right? That they're trying to be dishonest. So to just be like, you know what? I'm not okay. I'm not okay with a person I'm dating having a bunch of female friends or coworkers that they text at all hours of the night, that they don't want me to ever meet, that they're sending sexy pictures to. Like, I'm not okay with that. I don't care if they're up to something else or not. It's not okay. It's not okay with me. So it's a deal breaker. Like, you don't have to argue your point. And this is the thing too, because when you do make it about you and you're like, I don't care if they're up to anything or not. I don't want to become this like crazy, unhinged, jealous, nervous wreck of a person, because that behavior is not okay with me. And frankly, it's not going to be okay with any other reasonable person. And so, like, I don't want to have to argue about it. Like, if they're willing to ruin a relationship over texting, sexy pictures with a coworker, then obviously we didn't have a relationship to begin with, because that's not an unreasonable request. But yeah, make it about you. And then that way you can't, it's, yes. And Lineable says they want us to believe that abnormal is normal. Yes, absolutely. But they also realize, like, if you were to flip it or flip the script, if you were to do that to them, they would be outraged. So they know on some level that what they're doing is not okay. It's one-sided. They want to be able to do it, but God forbid that you even come close to doing the same thing, they'll freak out, because they know what they're really up to. But when you're making it about you and you're like, okay, these are the things that I'm just not okay with. That way, if you're coming across well-intended bad advice from friends, from a therapist, from family, from whoever, that's telling you, oh, well, you might be self-sabotaging and you don't want to give up on a good person. And, I mean, it's healthy to have friends of, like all kinds of stuff, just to be like, you know what, you can think whatever you want to think. This is a deal breaker for me. And that when you make it about you and your deal breakers and your standards and what you want in your life, then you become more grounded in that, and you're less inclined to get knocked off balance. It's easy to get knocked off balance, and a lot of people do it and they don't even mean to. All it takes is if you pieces of well-intended bad advice to get a person, like, to ruin your life, like to get you way knocked off balance if you let it. They might tell you like, well, but my husband has some female friends and everything is fine. And then of course, then a person gets sucked back into all of that denial and self-doubt and all of that. And just because another person's husband has female friends that they text in the middle of the night, A, does not mean that they aren't cheating. And B, does not mean that that's okay. Right. And C, that does not mean that your partner's not cheating or that that's somehow okay. So just because somebody else is doing it and it hasn't been a problem for them doesn't mean that it's not a problem. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to be a problem for you. Um, Mike asks if a controlling, spiritually, verbally abusive Catholic mother makes excuses for her abusive husband when he hurts the children physically and emotionally, and the mother makes the children go to church and pray for him and feel sorry for him and look like a good Catholic family, which spouse is pulling the strings, or is it both? Has anyone else dealt with this? It is so confusing and crazy making. So those kinds of situations, it's both. So you're dealing with two deeply dysfunctional, abusive people who, and that I really kind of call this like growing up in a den of dysfunction, where neither parent is, there's no reprieve. Like both of them are abusive, both of them are incredibly toxic. There is a great website out there that might help, and it's called Luke173ministries.org. And it's run by a Catholic nun, and she is fantastic. She talks a lot about spiritual abuse from a biblical perspective and really counters a lot of scripture that is used to manipulate targets of abuse and into staying in abuse. And she addresses these kind of mistranslations or misappropriations of scripture with other scripture. And she comes from a very, in my opinion, a very healthy, balanced place of, there's no excuse for abuse. It's not okay. And it's disgusting when people, use and abuse spiritual texts to justify abuse. Like that's so a million miles away from what God is about. So that's a great website. It's Luke173ministries.org. So that might help you kind of find a good center with that. Oh, that's a big question, Missouri. Missouri Cowboy says, Dana, can you give a few pointers on protecting children from a narcissistic parent? I think it depends on how old the child is, but I would say regardless of the age, to continue to validate them and let them know that it's not okay, that how they're being talked to, even if they're being yelled at, put down, called names, what have you, hey, that's not okay. And, that this is your mother or your father, that this is their own issues. This has nothing to do with you. You happen to just be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they took this out on you, but this is not your fault. You didn't cause it and you can't stop it. And so all you can do is try to, steer clear of them as much as possible, but you're not to blame. And just really reinforcing that this is not about them and that they're not to blame for it. And, and then I think too, to also really, the book Divorce Poison, I think is fantastic. It really talks about, I think one of the best tips in there talked about creating a safe place for kids. And so if you have this really manipulative, high conflict ex, or let's say you're even a family member, right? Like you're the uncle or the aunt or whatever, and these parents are going through this awful divorce, to make your home, to let the child know, you know what, here in my home, like you're safe. and we don't have to talk about anything that you don't want to talk about, and that this you don't have to pick sides, and that I love you and I want to spend time with you and that I'm here for you, and if you want to talk, we can talk, and if you want me to listen, I will listen. And just letting them know, like, this is my home, you are welcome here, and you know making them feel as comfortable as possible. And so doing things like that, like really focusing on keeping that relationship solid between you and the child, whether or not you're the parent or you're the family member or what have you, focusing on the relationship and keeping that as solid as possible, doing things to strengthen it, going out for lunch together, even if it's a picnic. It doesn't have to be expensive stuff, like going out, spending time, having lunch together, even at home, turning the TV off, having lunch together. Or if you are into technology, playing video games together, going for a walk, you know, going to movies, doing stuff together, because kids especially, they're not going to remember. I think it was Maya Angelou who said this, like, kids, they're not going to remember, people are not going to remember what you said, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And with children, that's really, really very true. So focusing on kind of making sure that they know that they are safe, that they are loved, that they are appreciated, that this is a good place for them, can go a long way in kind of counteracting any manipulation, and hopefully in time, once they start kind of, if you're continuing to validate them about what they're seeing with this other parent and whatnot, that you guys can have more kind of appropriate conversations about boundaries and standards and deal breakers as they get older. Guy and Jackie says, Dana, can you put up the Luke 173 website? I am being stopped on here from doing it. Oh, you know what? I bet it is. I think YouTube might be blocking websites for chat. I will put it in the comment after this video airs. Yeah, Mark saying, yes, Dana, I try to take my kids out to the Children's Museum and movies and parks, so they have lots of fun and happy memories. And just that bonding, it's such an important thing. And frankly, these days there's so many kids that really grow up without a strong male presence in their life, and it's important. Dads are important, and having that, and good dads are really important. So dads that are making that effort to be in their kids' life and to just be a part of their life, it goes a long way. It really, really does. Okay, Kiara says, Dana, how do you deal with intrusive thoughts and the inner critic that mimics the abuser? My inner critic is debilitating and I don't know how to deal with it. With, the first step in kind of changing anything that's problematic is awareness. So becoming more aware of that voice, because we all have it. So if you can become aware of what is, when does that inner critic surface and what does it say? And once you're becoming more aware of it, so if it's saying stuff that you had an abusive person tell you, you can stop. And there's an old technique, I think it was Jim Rohn from years ago, who used to teach the sales training. And so he talked about it in terms of like sales training with getting rid of all of this negative talks, negative self-talk. And one of his tips was to say, cancel, cancel. So, and that always just stuck with me. I don't even know how I came across his videos. I don't know. He's a riot. But anyways, so telling yourself cancel, cancel, and or any variety of that, calling that voice out and just being like, you know what? Stuff it. Like, I don't need to hear that. It's not true. And then proving yourself right. So Tony Robbins talks about this too, with getting different references. So if you're trying to change how you feel about something, it's one thing to just have positive affirmations or positive self-talk, because that can feel really empty, right? Like it can feel like we're lying to ourselves when we're just like, yeah, okay, I'm great, I'm talented, you know, and you don't really feel that way. If you can start proving to yourself, yeah, you know what, I can do this and here's why. And then finding different references for it. So for example, you know, if that voice is telling you that you're stupid and lazy, to be like, you know what? No, I'm not. Like, depending on what you've done in your life, like, you know, hey, you know what? I graduated from high school, or I graduated from college, or I just got a raise at work, or, you know, I've been doing a really great job with, or I just finished knitting a scarf, or I, you know what I mean? Like you're proving to yourself, like, no, I'm actually a very competent, capable person. And here's why. So finding evidence of the more empowering belief that you want to cultivate, I guess is what I'm saying. And continuing to remind yourself of like, no. And I think too, to realize that we all struggle with an inner critic voice, even if a person's never been abused, but that voice is extra there when a person has been through abuse, but everybody has it. And so it's a big, but here's the thing too, is most people aren't even aware that they have it. They think that they're just being, you know, cautious, or like, they don't realize that it's this inner critic voice that's trying to talk them out of doing stuff. So it's good that you have that awareness that there is this voice there, and that it's spouting off all of these limiting beliefs, you know. And I think too, it can help to find somebody else that's doing what you want to do, and kind of using them as a role model. So whatever that might be. So let's say, for example, you're like, you know what, I want to lose weight, or I want to quit smoking, but I've never been successful before. Go, you know, go on YouTube and man, I tell you, I get so motivated. I go to those YouTube channels. People have lost over 100 pounds, and you know, you see like their struggle and their journey, and you learn about how they were able to do it and what they did, and you're like, okay, I need to cultivate more of that in my life, like that kind of a mindset. You know, like, yeah, I can. Like if they did it, then I can do it too. I just need to change. I need to take different action to get different results, if that makes sense. Um, let's see. Jennifer asks, how can you assess what kind of narcissist your parent is so you can deal with them better when you start talking to them again? They won't seek therapy to get diagnosed. You know, and really, so all of these like subcategories of narcissists, that's not in the DSM. Like they would never get diagnosed with any of that. That's just different subcategories, you know, people have come up with. But it's interesting and it can be helpful. But really, I think what's more helpful is seeing manipulative behavior for what it is, and then learning how to respond to it accordingly. So the more you can read up about, so shifting the focus from narcissism to the behavior, which mainly is manipulation. So the more you can understand manipulation, the more it's seriously, it's like seeing the the learning the tricks that a magician does. Like once you understand the trick, the gig is up. Like the magic is lost. You get how it's done. Manipulation is very much the same way. Once you have those certain key pieces of information of this is how they've been doing this trick for so long, and this is how I've been responding for so long, then you can start breaking that chain. And so we have book club tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book is on Who's Pulling Your Strings, which is all about manipulation. So we'll be covering, and we've read quite a few books on manipulation. You can find my notes on my website, which is thriveafterabuse.com. Go to book club, and then you can sift and sort. There's like 3 years of books, book club notes on there. But that's a good step. So really digging into manipulation, digging into in the book club book talks about this. So we'll go into this more in depth tomorrow night. But once you can spot the manipulation, once you can spot which strings of yours are being pulled, which is generally fear, obligation, guilt, sympathy, I would say. Those are the main ones. Once you can figure it out, you can start working towards breaking that. And then a big way to go about breaking that is to start giving yourself space to where you're not so reactive, where they say something or do something and then you just respond back. You either just cave in or generally cave in, like do what they want because you're trying to keep the peace. But like I said, we'll get into all of that tomorrow night in a lot more depth. So I hope that helps. Yeah, and Musically says, I don't even think therapy would help them. Seriously. I think it might actually make it worse. Probably. You're talking about, that's the thing, when a person has that wiring, any new information that they come across is going to be filtered in through that mindset. This is why, like religion, rehab, therapy, this kind of stuff, it's their mindset. So that mindset has to be broken and it has to be rebuilt. And that's really, really, really difficult. And you're talking, years, if not decades of work. If you think about how difficult is it for us to change? How difficult is it for us to get in tune with ourselves and to know when something feels good? This is like kind of, you would think kind of basic stuff, right? Like, when does something feel good? When does something feel bad? But, we've probably been this way for a very long time. And so we're having to relearn this whole, and frankly, I don't think most people have this skill set. I really don't. But like, we're having to relearn all of this and standards and boundaries and deal breakers and all of this stuff. And it takes practice, and it takes, the cool thing is there's no such thing as small change. Like, change happens. It feels like it's small, but you make a 1 degree difference in your behavior, and a year from now you're on a totally different trajectory. So, it all matters, but it takes practice, and it takes that continual practice, and it's, it takes a while. So you think about how difficult it is for us to change, and you think about, and we are highly motivated to stop hurting, right? Our life is not working. We're in a lot of pain. We've had a lot of painful relationships. We're in continual pain. Like, things are not working. We're frustrated. We're irritated. We're angry. We might be in danger. We're highly motivated to change. These people are not highly motivated to change because everything, quote unquote, works out for them because they push boundaries until people cave in. And the only thing that they really change is targets and tactics. So that's the thing, like, there is no like awareness of a problem for them. There is no impetus for change or for growth because they don't experience pain from their actions, which is sad, right? In a short-term way, we're like, oh, they're so lucky. Like, they don't have consequences. They don't have any pain. But they stay forever like a bratty, awful 4-year-old. Like, they don't grow. They never get to that Maslow, the top of that pyramid of self-actualization, whereas we can. And people only start climbing that pyramid, really that emotional part of that pyramid to self-actualization when they experience pain and they have that ability to introspect and and work on themselves and personal growth and um all of this stuff and have accountability for their life and for their actions. So narcissists don't have that, you know. Okay. So with that said, let's get comfortable and we will do a kind of a quick guided meditation thing tonight. Yes, absolutely. Real quick, Bricks and Feathers says, so maybe that's our competitive advantage against them. We're motivated to change, whereas they are not. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And without getting like too deep with all this, if you think about online scammers, before people knew that this was a thing, people were getting scammed right and left. And so what happened, right? So everybody kind of trusted the internet when it first came out. And then scammers and online dating predators started surfacing. So there were scammers. And then we got smarter, right? People wised up to it. They quit getting scammed. They quit getting hurt. Then the scammers leveled up, and then everybody else leveled up, and then the scammers leveled up, and then we caught on and leveled up. And it's this perpetual thing. And where this is, where I see this eventually going to is it's really going to go into basically how in tune is somebody, how emotionally aware is somebody, because a person can try to run game all day long, but the more a person is, what the long-term result of all of this is that it's going to make all of us a lot more in tune with the red flags, with our boundaries, our standards, and our deal breakers. It's going to force us to tighten that stuff up like crazy, because we're not going to have a choice, because things are going to start, the scams are going to keep leveling up, the manipulations are going to keep leveling up, and that's the only, people can try to stop scammers all they want and sociopaths and manipulators, but it really boils down to, once you learn to trust in your gut, to quit waiting around for like concrete proof, to realize, perpetual confusion, mental anguish, that kind of introspection, right away, that's keeps going on. That's reason to leave. When we start bowing out of situations at those early stages, then we don't get caught up in that stuff down the road. So yeah, it's amazing how wise, how intuitive, how in tune, emotionally aware and self-aware all of this stuff is causing people to become, whether we like it or not, right? So, okay. So with that said, let's take a moment and get comfortable. Actually, let me back up real quick. And then we'll get comfortable. So Stainless is saying, oh, I'm having a light bulb moment. Thank you, Dana. And so I was just talking about like scammers level up, we level up, they level up, we level up, because they have a ceiling to their growth, because they lack that insight, right? They lack that they feel entitled, they just don't have developed self-awareness. They are perpetually a bratty 4-year-old. And so I really feel that we as a race, as human beings, are on kind of this cusp of the next wave of evolution, which I feel is the emotional evolution. So I think on a larger scale, that's really kind of what's going on here. If people are going to continue leveling up until they really, it's really wild to me that human beings, if, as an animal, are so out of tune with our instincts, and our lives aren't, I mean, hardly anybody's life is really working for them. And it's because they've been so knocked off balance by all these different things. And I think in the next 50 years, the next 100 years, it's really people are going to be so much more in tune with themselves. And that's where all of this is going. So I think we're just at this next stage in evolution. Take that for what you will. So, okay. Now for real, let's take some time to get comfortable for real and relax. Get grounded, whether you are sitting in a chair or if you're lying down. Just relaxing your body. Realizing this is the time for you. And this is time well spent, and that it is okay to take a few minutes and relax and to get centered. And let's do 4 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Bringing your attention to the top of your head, kind of slowly scanning your head and your face for any tension that you might be storing. Relaxing your eyes, softening your forehead, relaxing your cheeks and your jaw, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth as you let your jaw hang open, relaxing your throat, the back of your neck, your shoulders, your arms, and your chest. Letting your chest open and relax. Letting your arms fall in a way that's comfortable for them. Relaxing your stomach, your hips, your lower back. Letting your legs fall in whatever position might be most comfortable. Feeling the weight of your legs and your arms as they completely relax. Relaxing your thighs, your calves, and your feet. Noticing if there's any areas of your body that you're storing any tension or pain. And let's do 4 more breaths, sending each breath in to that specific area that you might be storing tension or pain. Bringing oxygen into that area. And exhaling any pain, stress, or tension that you're holding. Let's do that for 3 more breaths. Now visualize a beautiful, peaceful, healing white light. Notice that this light is flickering inside of you in the middle of your chest, that it's your inner light and it connects you to all that is good and decent in the world and beyond. That light is always there. Even if you don't see it, even if you don't feel it, it's always there. And it's always connecting you to everything good and right with the world. Now visualize that light growing bigger and stronger with each passing breath. And feel how that light just effortlessly gets larger and larger as it expands, filling up your chest, through your neck, into your head, into your shoulders, down your arms, into your fingers, down into your chest, your rib cage, your stomach, effortlessly moving throughout your body. With every single cell that it touches, it's healing and it's restoring your body. Picture this light swirling, moving, dancing as it moves down your stomach, down into your legs, down into your knees, your ankles, and your feet, till that light has taken up every single molecule in your body. Easily and effortlessly moving its way around every single cell in your body, sending light and love, repairing every single cell in your body, reminding you of this connection that you have to all that is decent and good in yourself and in the world. You might feel that your hands are getting warm, and you might even notice that they're starting to pulsate as that energy moves through you. And now visualize yourself, this energetic being that you are, going out into the world, sending light and love to any person or people that you think could use some. Perhaps people in this chat, people in any support groups that you're in, people that you know in your everyday life. Giving them, going to them, giving them a big energetic hug, letting them know that they matter, sending light and love their way. Let's do this for the next 7 breaths. And when you're ready, come on back and give yourself a big energetic hug, reminding yourself that you matter and that your inner self is always here and it's always signaling to you throughout every single day. That you matter, that you are loved, that you are important, that there is so much that is right with you. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for joining me. And we will see you tomorrow for book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you guys can make it. And if not, then I will see you next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So have a fantastic rest of your night, and I will see you guys soon. So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care, and I will talk to you guys soon. Okay. Good night.